The first thing I learned after being reborn was that being rich was far more dangerous than being strong. I opened my eyes in a silk-covered bed, inside a mansion with enough gold in the walls to feed a city for 10 years. Before I could even sit up, a needle shot through the window and stopped 1 inch from my forehead. I caught it between 2 fingers. That should have been impossible for a 6-year-old body, but my new life had come with a strange gift. The moment I understood an object, I could duplicate it. Weight, shape, speed, heat, magical structure, even the force pushing it forward. I looked at the needle, understood the metal, the poison, and the motion behind it, then made 50 copies. The assassin outside had enough time to realize something had gone wrong. Then all 50 needles flew back through the same hole. I made them miss every vital point. I was not a murderer. I was simply a child who believed in aggressive education. The assassin dropped from the roof, pinned to a tree by his sleeves, boots, belt, and one very unfortunate section of his pants. The guards carried him away while I stared at the mountain of gifts surrounding my bed. Gold toys, jewel-covered books, a tiny carriage made from silver, a stuffed dragon with real rubies for eyes. That was when Harper entered the room. She was the youngest estate manager in the region, but she already had the cold eyes of someone who had survived 10 years of rich people making stupid decisions. She looked at the broken window, the needles in the tree, and me sitting calmly under a blanket. I asked her how often people tried to kill members of my family. She answered without changing expression, constantly. My new family owned mines, roads, shops, farms, warehouses, ships, magic towers, and enough land to appear on maps. Our wealth did not make us respected. It made us a treasure chest with legs. Rival merchants wanted our businesses. Criminal groups wanted our vaults. Mad adventurers wanted our artifacts. Distant relatives wanted our inheritance. Even people who had never met us wanted us dead simply because they believed rich blood produced better luck potions. By the time I turned 10, I had survived poison in my soup, a cursed doll, a collapsing balcony, a fake priest, 6 hidden blades, and 1 explosive birthday cake. The cake annoyed me the most. It had looked delicious. At 14, I reached the only logical conclusion. If wealth attracted danger, then I would become poor. Not ordinary poor. I wanted to be so completely broke that assassins would see my house and send me money out of pity. I would destroy the family fortune through terrible investments, move into a quiet cabin, grow vegetables, and spend the rest of my life duplicating pies. It was a perfect plan. Unfortunately, perfection lasted less than 3 days. My parents had vanished during an expedition into an ancient dungeon, leaving me as the legal head of the estate. I inherited more money than I could count, and Harper inherited the headache of watching me use it. I called her into the main office and told her I wanted a list of the worst businesses in the city. She asked if I meant businesses with temporary losses. I said no. I wanted disasters. I wanted places so bad that even desperate thieves refused to rob them. For the first time since I had met her, Harper looked frightened. By sunset, she placed 6 reports on my desk. The first was a potion shop that had not sold a useful potion in 2 years. The second was a mine cursed by a demon. The third was an inn filled with violent ghosts. The fourth was a farm occupied by monsters. The fifth was a dungeon transport company with broken wagons and useless teleport stones. The sixth was an academy club for students who had failed every practical exam. I felt hope. I bought all 6. Harper stood beside my desk, staring at the purchase records like they were funeral notices. She asked why I had paid full price when every owner would have accepted a tenth of the amount. I explained that losing money slowly would only extend my suffering. She rubbed her forehead and said nothing. The potion shop was my first target. It sat in the worst alley in the city, between a burned bakery and a wall that smelled like old fish. Its sign had fallen off years ago. Half the bottles were empty. The other half contained liquids that moved even when the bottles did not. Grant ran the shop. He was an alchemist with wild hair, black gloves, and the proud expression of a man who had exploded often enough to stop fearing fire. Every guild in the city had rejected his inventions. His healing potions caused hiccups. His strength potions made people extremely confident but no stronger. His invisibility potion only made clothing invisible, which had created several legal problems. I knew immediately that he was perfect. I gave him a mountain of gold and one simple order: invent the worst potion possible. Grant thought I was testing him. I assured him I was not. He asked what effect I wanted. I told him to combine cheap ingredients, terrible flavor, unstable magic, and a color that made customers uncomfortable. The potion should be useless in battle and embarrassing to drink in public. His eyes began to shine. That should have warned me. Grant worked for 3 days without sleep. I helped by duplicating whatever ingredients looked least valuable: bitter roots, sour berries, cracked mana crystals, mushroom powder, monster salt, and a sticky blue flower that grew in drainage ditches. I filled the shop with thousands of copies until we had to climb over sacks just to reach the cauldron. Then I noticed another problem. The shop used one tiny stove. Production would be slow. Slow production meant slow losses. So I duplicated the stove. Then I duplicated the cauldron. Then I duplicated the entire workbench, including every spoon, bottle, funnel, and flame rune. Grant walked outside for fresh air and returned to find the alley filled with 200 identical potion stations. Blue smoke rolled over the rooftops. Cauldrons bubbled in perfect rhythm. Bottles flew through the air as I copied their momentum and sent them spinning along invisible paths. I stood in the center, moving my fingers like a conductor. Roots chopped themselves. Flames split into smaller flames. Water rose from barrels in twisting dragons. 200 cauldrons poured at once, filling 10,000 bottles with a thick red liquid that smelled like lightning and spicy fruit. It looked flashy. It looked expensive. It looked like exactly the kind of production mistake that would erase my fortune. Grant tasted the first bottle. His hair stood straight up. He screamed. Then he ran through a brick wall. I waited for him to collapse. Instead, he ran back through a different wall and shouted that he felt amazing. The potion did not heal wounds in the traditional way. It forced the body to recover stamina, clear mental exhaustion, stabilize mana, and repair tiny injuries before they became serious. It worked faster than common healing potions. It was cheaper than clean water because I had duplicated all the ingredients. It tasted terrible for 3 seconds, then left a sweet flavor that made people want another bottle. I had ordered the worst potion possible. Grant had invented the world's first recovery drink. Adventurers discovered it the next morning. One exhausted swordsman drank a bottle, completed 3 quests without resting, and returned with his entire guild. By noon, the alley was packed. By evening, people were fighting over crates. By midnight, merchants were offering bags of gold for exclusive distribution. I tried to stop the disaster. I doubled the price. The customers assumed it was a luxury product and bought more. I changed the bottle into an ugly square shape. They said it was easier to stack. I printed a warning that the drink might cause temporary glowing sweat. The adventurers considered that a bonus. Then someone tried to poison the entire batch. I had expected assassins to come after me, but this attacker wanted to destroy the shop. A hooded figure slipped through the back window and poured black venom into the main tank. The venom was designed to spread through magic. 1 drop could corrupt 1,000 bottles. I watched from the rafters. I had left the window unlocked on purpose. Harper had noticed a suspicious buyer asking about our storage room. She wanted to increase security. I wanted the attacker to feel confident. Evil people made more mistakes when they believed they were clever. The hooded figure finished pouring the venom, turned around, and found me sitting on a floating chair made from duplicated broom handles. He threw 3 knives. I duplicated the empty space between us. That was one of the stranger tricks I had learned. I could not truly create space from nothing, but I could copy the magical distance defined by a barrier rune. The room stretched. The knives flew for several seconds without getting closer. The attacker ran toward me and remained in the same place, legs pumping uselessly. I dropped from the chair, copied his shadow, and nailed the copy to the floor with one of his own knives. His real body froze. Then I duplicated the venom. He laughed because he thought I had ruined even more bottles. I separated the copied poison into a floating black sphere, studied its structure, and duplicated the one harmless molecule inside it 10 million times. The sphere turned clear. I repeated the process inside the tank. In seconds, every drop of venom became a mild grape flavor. Grant tasted it and called it our best batch yet. I was offended. The attacker tried to bite a poison capsule hidden in his tooth. I duplicated the capsule before he could break it, changed the copied poison into grape flavor, and filled his mouth with 200 harmless capsules. He spent the next minute coughing up candy while city guards entered through the front door. The entire arrest happened in front of hundreds of customers. By morning, rumors had spread that our recovery drink could neutralize any poison. That was not technically true, but technical truth had never defeated enthusiastic advertising. Our sales tripled. 1 week after buying the worst potion shop in the city, I earned back 10 times my investment. I returned to the mansion in silence. Harper placed the profit report on my desk. I pushed it away. She pushed it back. I told her the shop was an accident. She told me the accident had purchased 3 neighboring buildings. I decided to move on to something that could not possibly succeed. The cursed mine had killed every business that touched it. It lay beneath a mountain shaped like a broken fang. Black mist leaked from the entrance. Tools rusted overnight. Workers heard voices inside the stone. Anyone who dug deeper than the 3rd level suffered terrible nightmares and woke up with claw marks across their armor. No valuable ore had ever been found there. I smiled for the first time in a week. This was not a bad investment. This was a financial execution. Harper refused to smile. She reminded me that the mine came with a curse, unstable tunnels, and a local criminal group that controlled the surrounding roads. I asked how much it would cost to repair everything. She gave me a number. I paid double. Then I announced that I would personally open the mine. The workers quit before I finished the sentence. That made my plan even better. Without workers, the mine could not produce anything. I could pour money into useless repairs, duplicate expensive equipment, and watch the entire operation collapse. I entered alone. Harper followed because she trusted me less than the curse. The first tunnel groaned like a hungry animal. Rotten support beams bent under tons of stone. Purple symbols crawled across the walls. Cold wind blew from below even though the lower tunnels had been sealed for decades. I touched one support beam and understood every crack in the wood. Then I duplicated it 1,000 times. The copies appeared in neat rows, forcing the tunnel wider. I copied iron braces, lanterns, rails, carts, ropes, drills, and even the tiny flame inside each lamp. In less than an hour, the abandoned tunnel became a shining underground highway. Harper asked why I was improving a business I wanted to ruin. I explained that I needed the mine to consume money efficiently. A collapsed hole consumed nothing. A fully repaired useless mine could swallow wages, equipment costs, food, storage, and transport forever. She stared at the duplicated equipment. I reminded her that copied objects cost me mana, not money. She stared harder. I had missed a small weakness in my logic. Still, the curse would save me. We reached the third level. The walls began whispering my name. The voice promised wealth, power, revenge, endless life, and every other thing ancient curses offered when they lacked creativity. I ignored it and kept walking. The fourth level opened beneath us. Thousands of red eyes appeared in the darkness. Harper drew a short blade from her sleeve. She was not a fighter by profession, but anyone who managed my family's estate carried at least 3 weapons. The eyes moved forward. They belonged to stone creatures shaped like thin wolves, each one made from black rock and smoke. The curse had created them from the mountain itself. I wanted the mine to fail, but I did not want Harper eaten, so I stepped in front of her and copied the sound of my own heartbeat. 1 heartbeat became 10. 10 became 100. 100 became 10,000, all pounding from different directions. The stone wolves became confused. They lunged at empty tunnels, walls, ceilings, and each other. I copied their momentum, rotated it upward, and sent the entire pack flying into the ceiling. Before they fell, I duplicated the rails beneath my feet and bent the copies into a massive spiral cage. The wolves crashed into it. I snapped my fingers, copied the cage's spin, and turned the whole structure into a roaring metal tornado. Black stone shattered. Smoke burst through the tunnel. Red eyes spun around me like falling stars. Then the broken pieces began glowing. Harper picked up one fragment and went very still. It was demon ore. Demon ore was rare because it normally formed only near powerful sealed monsters. It could hold curses without breaking. Weapons made from it grew stronger when exposed to hostile magic. Armor made from it could absorb spells. Our cursed mine did not contain a little demon ore. The monsters were demon ore. Every time the curse created a stone wolf, it produced another walking pile of treasure. I had discovered an ore deposit that repaired itself. I refused to accept this. I decided to make the curse stronger until the mine became impossible to use. We descended to the 5th level. The criminal group waiting there had already reached the same conclusion about the ore. They had hidden inside the mine before I arrived, planning to kill me, seize the tunnel, and sell the discovery in secret. Dozens of figures surrounded us with hooked blades, crossbows, and magic bombs. None wore heavy armor. They dressed like fast killers, confident that speed would protect them. Their leader offered me one chance to leave. I asked whether he had already told the city guards about his plan. He laughed. That was the answer I wanted. I had spent the walk down copying small sections of the tunnel behind us. Not stones, not rails. Entire connected pieces of underground space, held together by the mine's old transport runes. I placed the copies inside a portable mark no larger than a coin. When the criminals attacked, I dropped the coin. The tunnel unfolded. A second mine corridor burst sideways from the wall. Then a third opened from the floor. Then 20 more exploded into place, twisting around each other like the roots of a giant tree. The attackers ran toward me and vanished into the maze. I could hear shouting from every direction. One group charged through a doorway and came out of the ceiling. Another leaped over a gap and landed behind itself. A crossbow bolt traveled down 6 tunnels, circled the same attacker 3 times, and pinned his hood to a support beam. Harper watched the impossible maze turn with quiet concern. I told her I knew exactly what I was doing. That was mostly true. The curse reacted to the confusion. Stone wolves poured from the walls. I duplicated the criminals' empty weapon belts, stretched the copies into long straps, and tied every wolf into a moving chain. Then I copied the downhill pull of a minecart and applied it to the entire chain. Hundreds of wolves shot through the maze, dragging the criminals with them. They screamed past us once, then twice. On the third pass, I opened a transport mark connected to the city jail's delivery yard. The entire chain vanished through it. Later, the guards would report that several dozen criminals, 100 stone wolves, and half a ton of demon ore had appeared in their yard without warning. The criminals were arrested. The wolves were contained. The ore paid for repairs to the jail.
I considered that efficient.
Harper considered it insane. We reached the heart of the curse soon after. A black crystal the size of a house floated above an underground lake. Chains of smoke connected it to the mountain. Every pulse created new stone wolves in the tunnels.
I could have destroyed it. Instead, I duplicated it. Harper finally raised her voice. I explained that 2 curses should make the mine twice as dangerous. The copied crystal appeared beside the first. Their magic touched. For one beautiful second, I believed I had succeeded.
Then the curses began fighting over control of the mountain. Each crystal tried to absorb the other. Their hostile magic compressed between them. The pressure crushed impurities out of the surrounding stone. Black rock peeled away in waves, revealing bright veins of pure demon ore stretching in every direction.
The mine shook. The underground lake rose into the air. I copied the pressure between the crystals and placed it beneath the water.
The entire lake blasted upward through an old ventilation shaft, carrying tons of loose ore with it. Outside, witnesses saw a fountain of silver water erupt from the mountain, sparkling with black metal. By sunset, the cursed mine had become the most valuable mineral site on the continent. I had tried to double the curse. I had accidentally invented automatic ore purification. Within days, smiths, guilds, and adventurers were fighting to buy our metal. Grant used tiny demon ore flakes to reinforce his potion bottles, making them impossible to break. Harper opened a secure route between the mine and the city. The workers who had quit begged to return.
I paid them triple, hoping wages would reduce the profit.
Production increased 5 times.
I shortened the workday. Rested workers produced more. I ordered free meals.
The cooks discovered that mineral-rich cave mushrooms tasted incredible when grilled. Soon, the mine cafeteria earned money too.
I stood outside the mountain, watching carts of demon ore roll toward the city. Harper handed me another profit report. I asked whether the haunted inn had burned down yet. She said no. I told her to prepare the carriage. If potions and curses refused to ruin me, then I would trust the dead.
The haunted inn stood beside an old forest where sunlight never reached the ground. Its roof leaned sideways. Its windows opened by themselves. Every night, screams echoed from rooms that had no doors. Previous guests had been thrown downstairs, locked inside walls, chased across the roof, or awakened to find ghostly faces floating inches above their beds.
No one had stayed there willingly for 20 years. The owner had sold it to me for the price of 1 meal. I paid enough to buy a small castle. Harper asked why. I told her emotional pain made financial loss more meaningful. When we arrived, the front door opened on its own. A chair flew at my head. I duplicated it midair. The copy collided with the original, and both exploded into splinters. A chandelier dropped from the ceiling. I copied its upward momentum from 1 second earlier and sent it flying back into place.
The walls stretched. The hallway twisted. Pale hands reached from the floor. I walked through everything without slowing down. I copied each hand and made the copies pull the originals back underground. I duplicated the hallway's left turn until the corridor tied itself into a knot. I copied the sound of the ghosts screaming and played it backward. The entire building shuddered like it had heard something terrifying. Then Lydia stepped out of a locked room. She was the only person living inside the inn. She wore dark clothes, carried a lantern filled with blue fire, and looked more annoyed than afraid. She was a necromancer who had rented the attic because no normal landlord wanted a tenant who stored bones in the kitchen. Lydia had spent years studying the ghosts. She explained that the inn was not haunted by dead guests. It had been built over a broken dream gate. The creatures inside were emotional spirits that fed on fear, confusion, and sleeplessness. I heard only one useful detail. More fear meant more ghosts. I hired Lydia as manager and ordered her to make the inn worse. She asked how much worse. I told her I wanted guests to regret being born. Once again, someone's eyes began shining when they should have been concerned. Lydia redesigned every room. Beds floated. Curtains whispered secrets. Floors changed direction. Portraits insulted anyone who walked past. A ghostly bell rang whenever someone lied. The dining room served soup from empty bowls. The baths were heated by blue fire and occasionally sang funeral songs. I helped by duplicating the spirits. 1 ghost became 10. 10 became 100. I copied their cold, their voices, their glowing eyes, and the strange pressure that made candles burn backward. Soon, the inn contained enough supernatural activity to make the entire forest tremble. I expected the building to become unlivable. Instead, necromancers arrived. At first, there were 3, then 30, then hundreds. They loved the place. The dream spirits helped them practice controlling fear. The backward candles improved ritual focus. The singing baths soothed damaged magic channels. The insulting portraits became a popular confidence test. Lydia began offering guided haunting experiences, midnight spirit hunts, and private rooms where guests could safely confront their worst nightmares. The haunted inn became a luxury retreat. I raised the room price until one night cost more than a horse. The guests called it exclusive. I removed the roof from half the rooms. They praised the natural moonlight. I duplicated the ghost in room 13 until there were 13 of him. They started a comedy act. The inn sold out for 6 months. That was when Silas finally introduced himself. I had heard his name in whispers since childhood. He controlled a hidden network of killers, smugglers, monster poachers, and corrupted dungeon crews. He did not care about titles or politics. He cared about ownership. Anything profitable eventually received an offer from him. Anyone who refused received a funeral. His message arrived inside a black candle. Sell the potion shop, the mine, and the inn, or lose all 3. I burned the message and used the flame to warm tea. Harper wanted to move our workers into protected housing. Grant wanted to test an experimental explosion potion on Silas's headquarters. Lydia suggested filling his dreams with screaming furniture. I had a better idea. I announced that I would spend the weekend alone at the haunted inn, carrying the keys to every business vault. Harper understood immediately. Grant did not, but he enjoyed the part involving possible explosions. Lydia smiled in a way that made the ghosts nervous. The trap was simple. Silas believed fear made people predictable. He sent killers only when he was sure the target would run, hide, or beg. So I created the perfect scene for him. A young noble isolated in a haunted building, surrounded by darkness, holding everything his enemy wanted. I even dismissed the visible guards. At midnight, the forest went silent. The inn's windows turned black, shadows slid between the trees. Fast figures crossed the roof without making a sound. Others entered through underground passages. A few carried holy charms to repel ghosts. Several held demon ore blades stolen from one of our shipments. They had prepared for everything except me wanting them to come. I sat alone in the dining hall, drinking Grant's recovery drink from a crystal glass. The doors opened. A wave of sleeping gas rolled across the floor. I copied the gas, removed its direction, and sent it back through every hallway at once. The attackers wore masks, so they kept moving. Then the inn attacked. Lydia had taught the spirits one new emotion: excitement. The walls laughed. The floor bent upward. The staircase split into 100 smaller staircases and began crawling like centipedes. Beds charged through doors with blankets snapping like jaws. The killers tried to retreat. I duplicated every exit sign and pointed them all toward the basement. They followed. The basement had not existed the day before. I had created it by copying empty rooms and stacking them beneath the inn. Each room contained one harmless but deeply annoying trap: sticky floors, upside-down rain, endless curtains, doors that opened into the same room, tables that screamed when touched, a hallway filled waist-deep with soft pillows. The attackers fought through all of it. That impressed me. So I stopped being polite. I copied the moonlight shining through the roof and compressed it into silver blades. They rained down around the killers, cutting weapons, belts, mask straps, and bootlaces without touching skin. I duplicated the force of the falling chandelier from earlier and applied it sideways. A dozen attackers flew into a wall and became stuck in a painting. Another group activated holy charms that burned away the nearest spirits. I copied the charms, then I copied the copies. Thousands of golden symbols filled the basement. The attackers smiled, believing I had destroyed my own defenses. I rotated the symbols inward. Instead of repelling ghosts from the attackers, the charms repelled the attackers from the ghosts. Every spirit in the inn moved closer. The killers shot backward through doors, floors, and ceilings, bouncing away from ghosts like balls in a giant magical game. I stood in the center and adjusted the angles with my fingers. One attacker flew through 12 rooms, circled the chimney, struck a mattress, and landed safely inside a laundry basket. By dawn, every intruder had been tied with duplicated curtains and stacked in the lobby. None had died. All were furious. The city guards arrived to collect them. I had invited several wealthy adventurers to witness the arrest. They had watched from hidden viewing rooms while enjoying breakfast. By noon, the Haunted Inn was advertising a new attraction called the Midnight Capture Experience.
Fun.
Guests could pay to play the role of an intruder, while spirits chased them through the building. The waiting list reached 1 year. Silas lost dozens of trained people. I gained another profitable business. For the first time, I began to suspect that becoming poor might be harder than defeating an army. I decided my next investment needed teeth. The monster-infested farm had plenty. It covered a wide valley beyond the city, with rich soil, a clear river, and weather so gentle that almost anything could grow. That was the problem. Almost anything had grown. The previous owner had tried planting mana vegetables. Wild monsters ate them, absorbed the magic, and multiplied. By the time I bought the land, the fields belonged to armored boars, fire-breathing chickens, vine snakes, thunder rabbits, and one enormous basilisk that slept inside the grain silo. No worker had entered the valley in 2 years. I studied the numbers and felt peace return to my heart. The farm needed fences, barns, irrigation, seeds, equipment, guards, monster control, and enough food to keep the workers alive. Even if we restored everything, crops would take months to grow. This would finally be a business capable of losing money faster than it earned it. Harper warned me that I had said the same thing about the mine. I ignored that. Grant came because he wanted monster ingredients. Lydia came because several spirits from the inn had followed us and refused to leave. Harper came because somebody responsible had to witness the disaster. The moment our carriage crossed into the valley, a thunder rabbit hit it from the side. The creature was small, blue, and moving fast enough to crack the air. It struck one wheel, released a bolt of lightning, and launched the entire carriage into the sky. I stepped onto the door as we spun. Then I duplicated the carriage. 1 copy became 10. 10 became 50. They appeared around us in a giant rotating wheel. I transferred our momentum into the empty copies, slowing the real carriage until it floated gently downward. The duplicated carriages kept spinning. I folded them into a long wooden track and landed our carriage on top. We rolled through the air above the valley like a cart on an invisible mountain road. Below us, monsters looked up. I waved. The basilisk woke. It rose from the grain silo with half the roof balanced on its head. The creature was longer than the main street, covered in green-black scales, and surrounded by a cloud of poisonous dust. Its eyes turned stone gray as it focused on us. Anything caught in its stare became stone. I looked directly at it. Harper told me not to. I had already understood the gaze. The basilisk released a beam of petrifying light. I duplicated the beam, rotated the copy, and crossed them in the air. The 2 beams struck each other, their magic locked together, forming a solid gray platform. I jumped onto it. Then I duplicated the platform beneath my feet again and again, creating a staircase made from frozen death rays. I ran downward through the sky while the basilisk fired more beams. Every attack became another step. By the time I reached its head, the valley was filled with floating gray roads. I landed between the basilisk's eyes. It tried to throw me off. I copied the downward pull of gravity from my own body and applied it to my boots 10,000 times. My feet locked against the scales. The basilisk slammed its head into the ground. The valley shook. I did not move. Then I duplicated the softest sound I could hear, the creature's breathing while it slept. I layered that rhythm over its heartbeat. The basilisk's rage slowed. Its eyes became heavy. It yawned hard enough to create a windstorm and fell asleep with me still standing on its head. Grant stared at me from the carriage. Lydia stared at the floating staircase. Harper stared at the damage report she had already started writing. I decided not to kill the monsters. Dead monsters would only cost money once. Living monsters could destroy crops every day. So I ordered the valley restored without removing them. I duplicated fences, but I made the gaps wide enough for the thunder rabbits. I rebuilt barns with doors too small for armored boars. I copied thousands of seed bags and planted them in neat rows directly beside monster nests. I created irrigation channels that carried mana-rich water through every field. It was the worst farm design I could imagine. For 1 week, everything went according to plan. The thunder rabbits ate the silver carrots. The armored boars crushed the crystal pumpkins. The vine snakes wrapped themselves around the apple trees. The fire chickens burned the wheat. The basilisk slept on the grain silo. I watched the destruction from a hill and felt proud. Then Grant noticed something strange. The carrots eaten by thunder rabbits grew back with blue veins. The pumpkins crushed by armored boars developed shells harder than steel. The apple trees strangled by vine snakes produced fruit filled with healing sap. The burned wheat absorbed the fire chicken flames and became red grain that could stay hot for months. The monsters were not destroying the crops. They were evolving them. Mana plants adapted quickly to danger. Every attack forced a change. Every change created a rarer ingredient. I had built a farm where monsters improved the harvest. Grant ran through the fields like a man discovering treasure. He used thunder carrots to make speed drinks. He ground crystal pumpkin shells into armor powder. He mixed vine apples into regeneration syrup. Fire wheat became portable heat packs, emergency rations, and a sauce so spicy that adventurers used it as a courage test. I tried to ruin the harvest by duplicating the monsters. I copied one thunder rabbit into 100. They ate every carrot in the field. Then each rabbit produced a glowing blue egg. Thunder rabbits were not supposed to lay eggs. Lydia examined them and discovered that the copied bodies were unstable in a harmless way. The extra mana had condensed into eggs containing pure lightning essence. One egg could power a wagon for a month. I had accidentally created magical batteries. I duplicated the fire chickens. They formed a line, flapped together, and turned a dead field into glass. The glass absorbed heat during the day and released it at night. Builders bought it for winter homes. I duplicated the vine snakes. They wove themselves into living fences stronger than rope. I copied an armored boar. The copy charged the original. They collided, broke both tusks, and revealed that the inside of each tusk contained white alchemical crystal. Grant fainted from happiness. I grew desperate. I woke the basilisk. Surely the largest monster in the valley could destroy everything. I stood on the silo roof and rang a duplicated bell beside its ear. The basilisk opened one eye, saw me, and tried to bite. I jumped onto its nose, copied its forward momentum, and launched us both across the valley. We tore through fields, barns, fences, and irrigation channels. I steered by shifting the creature's weight with duplicated gravity. The basilisk became a living plow moving faster than a storm. Behind us, the earth rolled into perfect rows. Its poison fertilized the soil. Its scales knocked dead branches from trees. Its petrifying gaze turned rocks into smooth boundary walls. By sunset, the entire valley had been cultivated better than any normal team could manage. The farm workers began calling the basilisk the greatest agricultural tool ever discovered. I refused to call it that. The basilisk refused to answer to anything except the sound of the food bell. Our first harvest sold for enough gold to purchase 3 more valleys. I ordered free monster ingredients for the potion shop, hoping to erase the farm's profit. Grant used them to create 12 new drinks. I gave the best crops to the haunted inn. Lydia created a midnight menu that attracted wealthy magic users. I used demon ore to build stronger tools. The tools lasted forever, reducing our costs. Every business made the others more successful. I was not building 6 separate failures. I was building a machine that converted my worst ideas into money. Silas noticed too. He sent monster poachers into the valley. They did not come for the crops. They came for the creatures. Thunder rabbit essence, basilisk eyes, fire chicken hearts, and armored boar tusks sold for high prices in illegal markets. The poachers planned to kill everything in one night and blame me for failing to protect the farm. Harper discovered their scouts watching the roads. She suggested increasing patrols. I suggested decreasing them. She closed her eyes for several seconds. I explained that the poachers would not attack while security looked strong. If they escaped, they would return with better information. I wanted all of them in one place, confident, careless, and surrounded by creatures that hated cages. We left the main gate open. We placed empty wagons beside the monster fields. We even hung signs pointing toward the most valuable nests. The poachers entered after midnight. They moved quietly, using scent masks and silence magic. They spread through the valley with nets, chains, sleeping darts, and portable cages. Their plan was organized. Mine was ridiculous. I waited inside the grain silo beside the sleeping basilisk. When the first cage closed around a thunder rabbit, I duplicated the cage 1,000 times. The poachers froze. Empty cages appeared across every field, stacked in towers, hanging from trees, rolling down hills. Then I copied the closing motion of the first cage and applied it to all of them. Metal doors snapped shut in every direction. The sound woke the monsters. Thunder rabbits released lightning. Fire chickens sprayed flame. Vine snakes pulled cages into trees. Armored boars charged anything that smelled unfamiliar. The poachers tried to retreat through the open gate. I duplicated the gate and placed copies in front of them. Every time they crossed one, another appeared. They ran through 20 identical exits and remained inside the valley. Then I opened the silo. The basilisk looked at the poachers. They raised reflective shields to turn its gaze away. I had expected that. I copied the curved surface of one shield and spread it across the sky in a huge invisible dome. The basilisk's petrifying beam struck the dome, bent downward, and split into hundreds of smaller rays. Every wagon wheel turned to stone. Every weapon became too heavy to lift. Every cage fused shut around empty air. I carefully avoided the poachers' bodies. Stone people were difficult to question. Their leader threw a black sphere into the ground. Smoke exploded outward, carrying a teleport spell. I duplicated the destination mark before the spell completed. The poachers vanished. For half a second, they believed they had escaped. Then they reappeared inside the city jail's exercise yard. I had copied the same mark I used at the mine. The guards were getting used to my deliveries. By sunrise, the farm was safer, the poachers were arrested, and the monsters had produced another improved harvest during the battle. A fire chicken had burned a patch of moonbeams while lightning struck them. The result was a silver seed that exploded into harmless sparks when cooked. The haunted inn served them as celebration snacks. The guests loved them. I returned to the mansion and found Harper waiting with our updated account balance. It had grown so large that she needed a second page. I did not read it. I asked about the broken transport company. Harper said all 12 wagons were unusable, 9 teleport stones were cracked. Every known dungeon route was controlled by stronger companies, and the remaining employees had not been paid in months. I felt hope again. The company occupied a muddy yard behind the Adventurer Guild. Its wagons had missing wheels, broken roofs, burned seats, and steering runes carved backward. The teleport stones were even worse. Each one could open a gate, but no one knew where the gate would lead. One stone sent a test crate into a lake, another returned it upside down. A third delivered it 6 feet above the ground. A fourth opened a gate inside the same crate. The workers called the stones useless. I called them beautiful. My plan was to repair the wagons, pay everyone too much, and send empty transports along routes with no customers. The company would consume gold every day. If a wagon accidentally entered a dangerous dungeon, I could rescue the crew and charge nothing. Harper asked why I did not simply give away the money. I told her because people kept using gifts to start profitable businesses. She had no answer for that. I began by duplicating the broken wagons. Harper asked why I was making more. I explained that 12 broken wagons could lose only so much money. 12,000 broken wagons offered real potential. The copies filled the yard, the neighboring street, and 3 empty fields outside the city. I copied missing wheels separately, but placed them on the wrong wagons. I duplicated cracked axles, torn seats, and backward steering runes. Then I connected every wagon to one of the damaged teleport stones. Grant watched from a safe hill. Lydia watched from a safer hill. Harper stood beside me because she had stopped believing safety existed. I activated all the stones at once. 12,000 gates opened. The sky became a wall of spinning blue circles. Wind tore through the fields. Broken wagons jumped, rolled, floated, vanished, reappeared, and collided with empty air. One wagon entered a gate sideways and emerged as a line of wooden panels. Another fell for 10 seconds and landed 1 inch lower. Hundreds vanished completely. I smiled. This was finally a failure worthy of my effort. Then the gate stabilized. The cracked stones were not random. Each crack acted like an extra directional rune. Normal teleport stones followed known routes because their magic was too clean. These damaged stones leaked through gaps in the dungeon network. By activating thousands together, I had created a map of hidden paths. The missing wagons began returning. One carried red sand from a fire dungeon. Another contained ice crystals from a frozen ruin. A third arrived covered in glowing moss.
No mein Teesrind.
Several brought monster bones, ancient coins, rare herbs, and unopened treasure chests. One wagon returned with an angry crab the size of a house. I sent it to the farm, where it immediately began digging perfect irrigation ponds. The workers cheered. I stared at the teleport stones. We had found routes no company knew existed. Worse, the broken wagons were ideal for them. Dungeon passages changed shape. Clean, rigid transports could not survive. Our loose frames bent through narrow gates, twisted around magical pressure, and repaired themselves when I duplicated replacement parts. The company became profitable before sunset. I tried to destroy the discovery by opening every route at once. The result was a giant transport ring above the city. Thousands of blue gates connected into a spinning circle. Wagons entered from every direction and exited in perfect order. The damaged stones synchronized their mistakes, canceling one another out. Travel time between distant dungeons fell from weeks to minutes. Adventurers flooded the yard, guilds paid for route access, merchants rented wagons. The potion shop loaded recovery drinks for distant teams. The mine shipped demon ore without using roads. The farm sent fresh monster ingredients across the continent. The haunted inn began offering weekend packages to necromancers living hundreds of miles away. I had wanted to lose money on empty wagons. I had invented instant dungeon travel. Silas could not allow that network to remain mine. His people had lost control of the mine roads and the monster markets. Now our gates threatened every smuggling path they used. He attacked the company with something more dangerous than killers. He attacked it with a dungeon collapse. A transport crew entered a hidden route beneath the western cliffs. Silas's people detonated old seals behind them, causing 3 dungeon layers to fold together. Hundreds of adventurers became trapped between gates. The transport ring over the city began tearing apart. Blue cracks spread across the sky. Anything passing through could be cut into pieces or dropped into the void. The guild ordered everyone to evacuate. I stepped onto the first wagon. Harper told me the route was unstable. I told her that was why I had bought it. Grant loaded crates of recovery drinks. Lydia brought a lantern filled with dream spirits. Harper climbed onto the driver's seat and took the reins. The 4 of us entered the broken gate. The world became blue fire. Our wagon shot through fragments of different dungeons. A desert floated above us. An underground ocean hung to our left. Stone towers fell upward. Monster nests spun in the distance. The collapsed route had become a storm of places that should never touch. A blade of empty space cut toward the wagon. I duplicated the front wheel and threw the copy ahead. The blade sliced it in half. I copied that split, applied it to the space beside us, and opened a narrow path through the void. Harper drove through without slowing. A river poured from the ceiling. I copied the river's downward momentum, turned half of it upward, and created a tunnel between 2 walls of water. We raced through the center while giant fish swam above and below us. A pack of crystal beasts leaped from a floating ruin. Grant threw a crate of experimental speed drinks into the air. I duplicated the bottles, popped every cork, and used the escaping pressure like thousands of tiny cannons. Red liquid blasted across the route. The crystal beasts drank it by accident. They became so fast that they vanished from sight. Seconds later, they ran out of the dungeon entirely and crashed into the transport yard, where the guards placed them in reinforced pens. Lydia's spirits found the trapped crews by following their fear. We reached the first group inside a wagon hanging upside down over a black hole. I duplicated the black hole's pull. That sounded like the worst idea I had ever had, which meant I was improving. I placed the copied pull above the wagon. The 2 forces balanced. Everyone floated between them. Then I copied the wagon's last safe position from the transport rune, and forced the real wagon to return to it. Wood screamed. Space bent. The wagon snapped backward onto a stable platform. We rescued 30 people. There were hundreds more. The collapse grew worse. Dungeon layers slammed together. A fire fortress struck an ice cavern, producing a wave of steam that carried living shadows. A forest grew through a stone maze. A sleeping giant rolled across 3 routes and blocked the main gate with its shoulder. I climbed onto the wagon roof. Until then, I had been duplicating objects, attacks, and forces one at a time. Now I understood the whole disaster. Every route was a line of connected magical decisions. Each gate asked the same question: where should this path continue? The cracked stones answered differently. The collapse forced all those answers into one place. So I duplicated the question. Blue symbols exploded across the sky. 1 route became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became thousands. Instead of forcing every dungeon layer through the same broken path, I gave each one a separate exit. The desert peeled away toward the south. The ocean folded into a distant sea cave. The fire fortress spun back into its own dungeon. The forest withdrew from the stone maze. The sleeping giant fell through a gate and landed on a mountain where it continued sleeping. For one impossible moment, I stood above a river of worlds, directing entire landscapes with my hands. Every time I moved a finger, a gate opened. Every time I closed my fist, a route locked into place. Wagons flew around me in shining lines. Lydia's spirits marked trapped people with blue flames. Grant's drinks kept the crews moving. Harper drove across collapsing paths with the calm expression of someone steering through light rain. We pulled out the final group seconds before the last unstable layer shattered. Then I found the explosives Silas's people had used. Their magic carried a return mark to the hidden chamber where they were watching the collapse. I copied the mark. I did not send an explosion back. That would have been rude. I sent every broken wagon we had left. Hundreds of damaged carts vanished into the mark. The people in the hidden chamber were buried under wheels, seats, doors, and one extremely confused thunder rabbit that had climbed aboard at the farm. City guards followed through a stable gate and arrested them. When we returned, the transport yard was silent. Then every rescued adventurer raised a weapon, bottle, lantern, or broken wagon part into the air. The cheering shook the city walls. By the end of the month, our company handled more dungeon travel than every rival combined. I had become richer again, but something more dangerous had changed. People no longer saw me as a foolish young noble wasting an inheritance. They saw me as the man who could walk into a collapsing world and build roads through the void. That made assassins more cautious. It also made stronger enemies curious. I needed to fail bigger. The useless Academy Club was waiting. The Academy Club met in a storage shed behind the dueling grounds. Calling it a club was generous. It was a collection of students the Academy did not know where to place. Some had too much mana and no control. Some had strong bodies and weak spells. Some could cast only one strange technique. Others froze whenever a monster looked at them. They had failed every official team test. The Academy kept them around because removing them would make the graduation numbers look worse. I gave the club enough money to build a private training hall. The Academy Dean thanked me for supporting education. Then I asked for the training hall to be built inside an abandoned dungeon. The Dean stopped thanking me. The dungeon was known as the Hollow Bell. It had no treasure, no useful monsters, and no stable core. Every few hours, a deep sound rolled through the tunnels and changed the direction of gravity. Floors became walls, walls became ceilings. Anyone training inside spent more time vomiting than fighting. It was perfect. My goal was not to create strong students. Strong students attracted sponsors and earned prize money. I wanted the club to consume equipment, potions, food, transport, and repair costs while accomplishing nothing. I supplied them with demon ore weapons. Harper pointed out that this might improve their performance. So I made the weapons absurdly heavy. I gave them recovery drinks. Grant pointed out that this might improve their endurance. So I ordered the drinks served in barrels they had to carry while running. I gave them monster ingredients from the farm. Lydia pointed out that this might improve their magic. So I made them cook the ingredients while avoiding dream spirits. Finally, I built a training course through the Hollow Bell and filled it with copied traps. I duplicated swinging logs, falling nets, flame walls, ice floors, moving stairs, thunder rabbit charges, basilisk gaze platforms, and sections of the haunted inn's screaming hallway. None of it was lethal. All of it was unreasonable. The Academy's best clubs came to watch the failures embarrass themselves. They laughed when the students entered wearing heavy demon ore gear. They laughed when the first gravity bell rang and everyone fell sideways. They stopped laughing 3 minutes later. The club had spent years failing in different ways. Normal training assumed everyone solved the same problem with the same skills. My course offered no normal solution. The student with too much mana could not cast a precise spell, so he released a wild blast into the floor and used the explosion to redirect the entire team. The student with no attack magic created tiny floating lights. She placed them inside the swinging logs, turning each obstacle into a visible moving target. The student who froze around monsters could not move when the copied thunder rabbits charged. So the others lifted him like a shield. His defensive magic activated automatically and blocked the entire herd. The student with one strange technique could make objects slightly sticky. He covered the team's boots, allowing them to run on walls when gravity changed. Their weaknesses fit together. By the time they reached the final chamber, they were moving like a single creature. I made the last challenge myself. I duplicated the Hollow Bell's gravity pulse and trapped it inside a sphere. Then I copied the sphere until hundreds floated through the chamber. Each one pulled in a different direction. Rocks, platforms, weapons, and broken pillars drifted between them. At the center waited a giant training beast made from demon ore scraps, vine snake fibers, and crystal pumpkin shell. It had 6 arms, no legs, and a furnace in its chest powered by thunder rabbit eggs. Grant called it beautiful. Harper called it a budget emergency. Lydia called it hungry. The students called it impossible. I called it the entrance exam. The beast attacked. Its first punch crossed the room by falling sideways through 5 gravity fields. The club scattered. A second arm fired crystal seeds that burst into sticky vines. A third released blue fire. A fourth swung a hammer larger than a wagon. The watching students cheered, expecting a quick defeat. The club survived. They used sticky lights to mark safe gravity paths. They rode floating rubble between spheres. They baited the beast into striking its own vines. The defensive student stopped freezing because there was no safe direction to freeze in. Fear became useless, so he moved. Then the hollow bell rang. Every gravity sphere reversed. The entire room exploded upward, downward, and sideways at once. The club lost control. The giant beast pulled open its chest furnace and began charging a blast powerful enough to end the test. I watched from above, ready to stop it. Then the students did something I had not planned. They threw away their expensive weapons. The demon ore blades, hammers, rods, and shields flew into different gravity fields. The student with too much mana blasted them all at once. The sticky magic connected them. The floating lights marked a rotating pattern. The defensive barrier formed a hollow center. Their abandoned equipment became a giant spinning cage. It closed around the beast. The furnace blast fired inward. Demon ore absorbed the hostile magic. Crystal shell reflected the heat. Vine fibers tightened. The beast's own attack compressed inside the cage until the entire structure glowed white. Then the students redirected the energy through the open top. A beam tore through the dungeon ceiling and reached the clouds. For several seconds, a pillar of light stood above the academy like a second sun. The club had defeated the training beast. More importantly, they had discovered a combined technique capable of absorbing and redirecting almost any attack. The academy stopped calling them failures. Adventurer guilds began calling them future S ranks. I tried to prevent that by giving them a harder course. They cleared it faster. I tripled the gravity. They trained their bodies. I filled the course with dream spirits. They learned mental defense from Lydia. I made Grant supply experimental drinks with unpredictable effects. They developed battle signals for glowing hair, floating shoes, temporary extra arms, and uncontrollable singing. I sent them through hidden dungeon routes with broken wagons. They became the best mobile rescue unit in the academy. Every attempt to waste resources turned them into stronger adventurers. Soon, the club began completing quests the elite teams rejected. They cleared collapsed tunnels, rescued lost groups, and captured monsters alive for the farm. They did not look graceful. They looked like a moving accident made from heavy weapons, sticky lights, flying barrels, and terrible decisions. I respected that. The elite clubs did not. Their members had spent years building reputations. They wore fine uniforms, carried polished weapons, and trained under famous instructors. Now a group from a storage shed was taking the best quests. One afternoon, the academy announced a public challenge. The top official club would face my failures inside a controlled dungeon. The winner would receive access to a newly discovered training ruin. I had no interest in winning. A valuable training ruin would increase the club's worth. So I accepted and secretly planned to make them lose. The challenge took place inside an ancient arena with 5 shifting zones: forest, swamp, ruins, lava field, and sky bridges. Each team had to collect 3 core stones while avoiding monsters and each other. Direct killing was forbidden. Everything else was allowed. The official club entered with perfect formation. My students entered carrying a sofa. I asked why. They said the sofa was comfortable. That answer made me worry they were learning from me. The match began. The official club rushed toward the nearest core. My students sat on the sofa and waited. The crowd laughed. Then the gravity shifted. The sofa fell sideways through the forest at tremendous speed. The students used sticky magic to hold on, defensive barriers as steering fins, and wild mana blast as propulsion. They shot past the official team like a living cannonball, grabbed the first core, and crashed through the ruins. The crowd stopped laughing. I tried to interfere without appearing to interfere. I duplicated several arena monsters and placed them along my club's path. The students turned the sofa upright, loaded it with recovery drink barrels, and used it as a mobile fortress. The defensive student blocked attacks. The light caster blinded monsters with harmless flashes. The wild mage blasted holes through the ground. The sticky caster attached the monsters to each other until they rolled into a giant ball. Then they rode the ball across the swamp. The official club caught up near the lava field. Their captain used a powerful wind technique to cut the monster ball apart and scatter my students. For the first time, the failures looked trapped. One hung above lava from a sticky rope. Another clung to a broken pillar. The defensive student stood on a tiny rock surrounded by fire. The wild mage had lost his weapon. The official team took the second core and moved toward the sky bridges. I relaxed. Then my students started laughing. The monster ball had not been a vehicle. It had been carrying the sofa. The sofa burst from the lava, protected by layers of defensive magic and soaked in recovery drink. The sticky caster pulled everyone aboard. The wild mage grabbed 2 barrels and fired mana into them. Grant's drink reacted to the heat. The barrels exploded downward. The sofa launched into the sky. It crossed the arena, past the official team, struck the 3rd core platform, and continued upward until it hit the arena barrier. The students peeled themselves from the cushions, grabbed the final core, and fell back onto the sky bridge. They won while sitting down. The training ruin became theirs. The academy sold miniature sofa charms the next week. My share of the sales increased my wealth again. That should have been the end of the academy problem. Instead, Silas used the public match to hide his next move. One of the core stones had been replaced with a corrupted dungeon seed. The moment my students carried it into the hollow bell, it began growing. Black roots spread through the walls. The gravity pulses became violent. Training monsters twisted into real creatures. Every exit sealed at once. Silas had finally stopped trying to steal my businesses. He wanted to destroy the people who made them work. The club was trapped below. Grant was delivering drinks inside the dungeon. Lydia was teaching mental defense in a lower chamber. Harper had entered to inspect the latest damage. All 4 people I trusted were underground when the seed awakened. I stood outside the sealed gate. The academy's instructors attacked it with spells. Nothing happened. The corrupted seed was feeding on the hollow bell's unstable core. If we broke the entrance by force, the entire dungeon could collapse. Silas's message appeared across the stone in black fire. He offered to open the gate if I surrendered the mine. Farm, shop, inn, transport network, and academy club. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because Silas had finally revealed his weakness. He believed my businesses were separate treasures. He believed he could threaten one and receive the others. He did not understand that I had stopped caring about the buildings. The real empire was the people inside. I touched the sealed gate and copied it. A second gate appeared beside the first. The instructors shouted that opening a false entrance would lead nowhere. They were right. So I duplicated nowhere. The copied gate opened into a blank pocket between dungeon layers. I stepped through and created another gate ahead of me. Then another. I built a tunnel through the empty space surrounding the hollow bell, walking around the corrupted core instead of entering through it. Each step created a floor. Each breath became air. Each flame from my palm became a line of lights stretching into the darkness. Within minutes, I had built a secret road beside the dungeon. I could hear the corrupted seed pounding through the walls like a giant heart. I followed the sound. Inside, Harper had organized the students into moving groups. Grant used recovery drinks to keep injured people awake. Lydia sent spirits through cracks to search for exits. The club fought mutated training beasts using everything I had forced them to learn. The impossible course had prepared them for an impossible disaster. But the dungeon kept growing. Black roots wrapped around gravity spheres and pulled them into the seed. Every sphere it absorbed created another layer. Forests, caves, towers, and rivers unfolded beneath the academy. The hollow bell was turning into a massive living dungeon. At its center, the corrupted seed formed a body. It looked like a dark tree walking on roots, with a hollow trunk and a crown of stone bells. Every bell changed gravity in a different direction. Each ring tore pieces from the dungeon and pulled them into orbit around the creature. My students attacked together. Their spinning cage absorbed 1 gravity blast, then 2, then 10. The 11th shattered it. Demon ore weapons flew across the chamber. Barriers broke. The club crashed into the walls. I opened my secret gate above them. Then I dropped an entire lake through it. The underground lake from the cursed mine had refilled since my last visit. I had copied its water before entering. Thousands of tons fell onto the walking tree. Its gravity bells rang. The water split in 12 directions, forming rivers through the air. That was what I wanted. I duplicated each river. The chamber filled with spiraling water. I copied the wild mage's blast and used it to turn the rivers into a rotating storm. I copied the sticky spell and connected every drop. The storm became a single liquid net. It wrapped around the tree. The bells pulled in different directions, but the connected water forced their gravity fields to fight each other. Roots lifted from the ground. Stone branches cracked. I fell through the storm, landed on the trunk, and punched my hand into the corrupted seed. Its magic tried to invade me. I let it. For 1 second, I understood the entire dungeon. Then I duplicated its hunger. The seed fed on magic. I created a second hunger inside it, and pointed that hunger inward. The dungeon began consuming itself. Black roots ate black roots. Bells absorbed other bells. New layers folded into old layers. The walking tree shrank as its own power devoured its body. Silas had designed the seed to grow without limit. Why turned that limitlessness against it? The creature collapsed into a black crystal no larger than my fist. I caught it. The hollow bell became silent. Then the entire expanded dungeon began falling apart. There were hundreds of people inside, scattered across dozens of new layers. We had seconds. I held up the black crystal and duplicated the last stable gravity pulse stored inside it. 1 bell sound rolled through every tunnel. Instead of changing gravity, I copied the direction of the main exit and applied it to everyone. Students, instructors, monsters, broken weapons, sofas, potion barrels, and confused dream spirits all fell toward the same point. The sealed gate burst open. A river of people shot out across the academy grounds. I came last, riding the captured seed like a surfboard. While the dungeon folded behind me, the crowd saw me cross the sky, land on the Academy Tower, and hold up the object that had nearly swallowed them. They cheered. I was tired, angry, and richer than ever. The Academy wanted to build a statue of me. I refused. They built one of the sofa instead. Silas had failed again, but this attack was different. He had reached the people around me. He had almost won. I stopped treating him like a greedy criminal hiding in the dark. From that day on, I treated him like a target, and I had no intention of chasing him. I was going to make him come to me. To lure Silas into the open, I announced my greatest failure yet. I purchased the Ash Basin. The Ash Basin was a dead region beyond the northern mountains. Nothing grew there. The ground was covered in gray powder. Dungeon storms crossed it without warning. Old maps showed several cities in the area, but every city had vanished during a disaster a century earlier. Even monsters avoided it. Harper read the purchase report twice and asked what business I planned to build on land that could not support life. I told her I was opening a luxury adventure resort. She looked at me for a long time. Grant asked whether the resort would have a potion bar. Lydia asked whether the vanished cities had ghosts. I said yes to both because I had no idea. The announcement spread quickly. Most people assumed I had finally lost my mind. Merchants laughed, rival guilds predicted bankruptcy. Wealthy adventurers called it an expensive graveyard. Silas heard something different. The Ash Basin sat beneath several unknown dungeon currents. If my transport stones found stable routes through it, I could reach every hidden base in the north. Silas could not let me explore freely. He would either sabotage the resort or attack before it opened. I wanted both. We moved thousands of empty wagons into the basin. I duplicated unfinished buildings across the plain. Roofs without walls, doors without rooms, towers lying sideways, bridges leading into the sky. It looked like a city designed by someone who had heard about cities but never seen one. I spent enormous amounts on imported food, furniture, decorations, and training equipment. Then I copied all of it until the basin overflowed. Harper reminded me that duplication did not reduce our bank balance, so I bought the original items at ridiculous prices. The sellers used their profit to order demon ore tools, farm ingredients, recovery drinks, transport access, and haunted inn reservations. Most of the money returned to me within a week. I began to understand why rich people sometimes stared sadly at walls. The Academy Club arrived to train among the dungeon storms. Grant opened a temporary drink stand. Lydia released dream spirits into the empty structures to search for traces of the vanished cities. Harper organized supply lines with terrifying efficiency. I made sure everyone believed we were poorly defended. The valuable cargo was displayed in open squares. Transport stones were placed on low platforms. Demon ore beams supported unfinished towers. Monster eggs powered the lights. Every business I owned had something exposed. Then I left the basin. At least I appeared to leave. I duplicated my carriage, my coat, the sound of my voice, and the shadow beneath my seat. From a distance, the copy looked real. It traveled south with an escort while I remained beneath the basin inside a tunnel made from folded transport routes. Silas attacked that night. He did not send a few killers. He sent an army of criminals, corrupted adventurers, monster poachers, dungeon thieves, and hired spellcasters. They entered from hidden routes on every side. Smoke covered the moon. Silence barriers swallowed the alarm bells. Black chains struck the transport stones to prevent escape. At the same time, bombs exploded beneath the unfinished buildings. The towers fell. The bridges shattered. The open squares filled with fire. Silas's army rushed forward, believing thousands of workers and students were trapped. They found empty streets. The entire resort had been evacuated through my underground route 2 hours earlier. Only the Academy Club remained, hidden inside the sideways tower. Only Grant remained, standing behind his drink counter. Only Lydia remained, sitting in the center of a circle of blue lanterns. Only Harper remained, holding a small signal bell, and I remained beneath everyone. Harper rang the bell. The Ash Basin woke up. Lydia had discovered that the vanished cities were not destroyed. They had been buried under ash by a dungeon storm. Their buildings still existed beneath the plain, preserved inside layers of compressed magic. I had spent days understanding their shapes. Now I duplicated them upward. Stone streets burst from the ground. Houses unfolded from ash. Walls rose in circles. Towers emerged beneath enemy formations and carried them into the air. Entire neighborhoods appeared in seconds, turning the empty basin into a vast ancient city.
Gorda Suez Master Angolan, Speedodia hundreds of isolated groups.
The unfinished resort structures had never been buildings. They were markers showing me where to place the real ones. Grant opened the taps on his drink barrels. I duplicated the pressure. Rivers of red recovery drink blasted through the streets. The liquid was harmless, but it was thick and extremely sticky before mixing with air. Enemy boots became glued to stone. Wheels stopped turning. Spellcasters lost balance. Then the drink absorbed oxygen and turned fizzy. The streets erupted in harmless red foam. Thousands of criminals vanished under bubbles. The Academy Club launched from the sideways tower on their reinforced sofa. They had added demon ore fins, thunder egg engines, and a front shield made from crystal pumpkin shell. The sofa cut across the city like a low-flying ship. The students dropped sticky lights onto rooftops, marked enemy groups, and used redirected attacks to disable weapons. A giant fire spell struck their spinning cage, curved around it, and blasted the doors off 20 prison wagons Harper had placed near the city entrance. The empty wagons rolled forward by themselves. I had copied the pull of the transport ring and attached it to their axles. They moved through the streets, collecting trapped attackers like hungry boxes. Lydia raised her lantern. The buried city had preserved a century of dreams, not souls, not dead people. Dreams left behind by citizens who fled the dungeon storm. Fear of losing homes, hope of returning. Memories of meals, games, gardens, and warm beds. The dream spirits poured from the ground. They formed glowing crowds in the streets. Silas's people saw families running toward them, children pointing from windows, old shopkeepers waving from doorways. The illusions did not attack. They simply made the invaders feel watched by an entire city. Guilt broke concentration faster than fear. Spells failed. Formations collapsed. Some attackers surrendered without being touched. Others were not smart enough to surrender. A group of corrupted adventurers reached the main transport platform and activated a stolen dungeon key. A gate opened above the city. A six-headed swamp serpent fell through. Each head breathed a different poison. Its body crushed 3 towers. Acid rain spread across the rooftops. The Academy Club turned toward it, but they were too far away. I stepped out of the ground. The serpent's first head breathed green fog. I duplicated the fog into a sphere, compressed it, and fed it to the second head. The second head spat black acid. I copied the acid's downward force and made it fall upward into the third head. The third head released paralysis dust. I duplicated the monster's sneeze and triggered all 6 noses at once. The serpent sneezed so hard that its necks tied themselves together. Then I copied the knot. The magical idea of being tied spread from neck to body. The giant serpent folded into a tight coil and rolled through the street like a wheel. I jumped onto its back. The creature rolled faster. I duplicated the spin, increased it, and rode the serpent up the side of a tower. We launched into the air, crossed half the city, and crashed onto the stolen gate platform. The platform shattered. The serpent landed inside a prison wagon that should not have been large enough to hold one head, let alone the whole creature. I had duplicated the wagon's interior using the Haunted Inn's stretched hallway trick. The doors closed. The wagon rocked twice. Then it became quiet. Grant leaned out from his drink stand and applauded. The corrupted adventurers did not. They attacked me with enchanted chains designed to block duplication magic. Silas had studied me carefully. The chains created zones where copied objects became unstable and disappeared. 5 hooks wrapped around my arms and legs. The attackers pulled me down. For a moment, everyone believed they had found my weakness. I smiled. I had never needed to duplicate the chains. I duplicated the pulling force. Every attacker yanked backward with all his strength. I copied that force, rotated each copy toward the center, and applied it to the people holding the chains. They flew together. Helmets, elbows, boots, and weapons collided in a loud metal-free crash because none of them wore heavy armor. They collapsed into a pile. I copied the pile's shape, not the people inside it. A shell of soft foam appeared around them, holding everyone in place. The prison wagons collected them. Across the basin, the battle turned in our favor. That was when Silas appeared. He stood on the highest tower, wearing a long dark coat and holding a thin black staff. He looked nothing like the killers he commanded. No armor, no giant sword, no dramatic scars. He could have passed for a quiet traveler waiting for rain. His power was control over dungeon locks. He raised the staff. Every gate in the basin closed. Our transport wagons stopped. The hidden evacuation route vanished. The prison wagons froze. Black barriers rose around the ancient city. Then Silas opened one enormous lock beneath the ash basin. The ground split. A forgotten dungeon rose from below. It was not a cave or tower. It was a gigantic machine shaped like a black wheel, buried under the vanished cities. Metal rings rotated through the earth. Teeth larger than buildings crushed stone. A red core burned at the center. The old dungeon storm had not buried the city by accident. The machine had tried to pull every building underground. Silas had awakened it. He did not care whether his own army escaped. He planned to crush the entire basin, destroy my people, and collect whatever remained. The ancient city tilted toward the wheel. Streets broke apart. Towers slid. Prison wagons rolled toward the opening. The dream spirits flickered. The Academy sofa lost power as thunder eggs were pulled from its engine. Silas believed he had locked every route. He had locked every route he understood. I had spent my life investing in broken things. Broken things always had extra paths. I touched the ground and called to every cracked teleport stone in the basin. They answered. Blue gates opened inside the black barriers, not clean circles, jagged shapes, crooked doors, tiny windows, long slits. One gate looked like a staircase. Another looked like a hole in a painting. A third appeared inside a recovery bottle. The transport workers restarted the wagons. Harper redirected the prison convoy through the crooked gates. Lydia sent the dream spirits into the black wheel to find its memories. Grant threw thunder eggs into the red drink fountain and created a river of lightning foam. The Academy Club caught the current with their sofa fins and flew straight toward Silas. He closed the nearest gate. I duplicated the closing motion and applied it to the space behind him. The air snapped shut like a door and launched him from the tower. He fell toward the black wheel. I jumped after him. The machine's pull became stronger. Buildings, wagons, monsters, and rivers spiraled around us. Silas opened locks in the air, creating black platforms beneath his feet. He ran downward through the storm, while I followed on duplicated pieces of falling street. He swung the staff. The dungeon lock closed around my chest. My mana stopped moving. Every copy in the basin flickered. The ancient city began collapsing again. Silas had not blocked my power. He had locked the path between my mind and my mana. That was clever. I respected cleverness. Then I became unfair. Before the lock closed, I had understood it. I could not duplicate magic while trapped, but I had already duplicated the moment before being trapped. A copy of my own previous mana flow waited inside the recovery bottle hanging from my belt. I broke the bottle against my chest. Red liquid splashed across the lock. The stored mana pattern entered my body. My power restarted from the outside. I duplicated the lock 100 times and placed every copy around Silas. He froze in mid-air. One lock blocked his staff. One blocked his arms. One blocked his voice. One blocked the magical connection to the black wheel. The remaining 96 locked the space around him so tightly that even dust could not move. Silas hung above the machine like an insect trapped in glass. I could have ended the battle there. Then the black wheel opened its central eye. The dungeon machine was older than Silas's control. Once awakened, it did not need him. The red core looked at the city and began its final rotation. Every ring accelerated. The pull became strong enough to lift mountains. The Academy Club's sofa tore in half. Grant's drink stand flew away. Lydia's lantern cracked. Harper lost her footing on a transport wagon. I released Silas from one lock, grabbed his coat, and used him as an anchor while I copied the pull of the machine. He looked at me like I was insane. He was correct. I duplicated the black wheel's attraction and placed the copy above the basin. For 1 second, everything stopped between two equal forces. The entire ancient city floated. Buildings hung in the air. Rivers became silver ribbons. Wagons drifted beside towers. Thousands of captured attackers spun slowly inside foam. The Academy students grabbed pieces of sofa. Harper floated 3 inches above the wagon roof, still holding her signal bell. Then I began rotating the copied pull in the opposite direction. The floating city turned. Every building moved around the center like part of a giant clock. I matched the speed of the black wheel, then pushed beyond it. The machine's rings slowed as the city's opposite motion stole their momentum. The dungeon fought back. Metal teeth broke from the wheel and shot upward. I copied the crystal pumpkin shells stored in the farm wagons and expanded them into curved shields. The teeth struck, bounced, and entered crooked transport gates. They reappeared beneath the machine and smashed its lower rings. The red core fired a beam. The Academy Club rebuilt their spinning cage from floating street signs, wagon axles, demon ore beams, and the 2 halves of their sofa. The beam struck the cage. They redirected it toward me. Not at me, to me. I caught the beam in both hands. The heat burned through my sleeves. The force pushed me across the sky. I understood its structure, compressed dungeon energy, designed to erase obstacles and feed the remains into the core. I duplicated the feeding direction, then I reversed it. Instead of pulling energy inward, the red core released everything it had consumed during the last century. Stone, metal, water, magic, and whole pieces of the vanished cities exploded from the machine. I opened thousands of gates around the basin. Every piece flew into the correct place. Walls rebuilt themselves. Streets repaired. Towers restored. Gardens appeared beneath ash. Wells filled. Statues returned to empty squares. The ancient city was not merely rising anymore, it was becoming whole. The black wheel shrank as it emptied. I copied the final rotation of its smallest ring, placed that motion inside the captured corrupted seed, and threw the seed into the red core. The seed was still hungry. The machine was still full of dungeon power. They consumed each other. A black tree grew through the wheel. Metal roots wrapped around stone branches. Bells rang inside turning rings. For a moment, the two disasters became one towering creature. Then the hunger folded inward. The entire thing collapsed into a small dark fruit. I caught it before it hit the ground. The ash basin became silent. The ancient city settled gently onto the plain. The crooked gates reopened. The prison wagons rolled toward the city jail. I unlocked Silas's voice. He asked what I planned to do with him. I looked at the army he had abandoned, the people he had tried to kill, and the city he had nearly destroyed. I told him he was going to experience my transport service. I opened a gate beneath his feet. Silas fell directly into the jail's most secure courtyard, still wrapped in 99 dungeon locks. The guards later complained that I had delivered him upside down. I considered that a minor detail. The battle was over. The ash basin was no longer dead. The restored city had clean streets, working wells, preserved houses, dungeon-resistant walls, and hidden routes connecting it to every business I owned. Adventurers wanted to explore it, scholars wanted to study it, craftspeople wanted to move into it. The academy wanted a second campus there. Necromancers wanted to visit the Dream District. Farmers discovered rare ash crops growing between the stones. My luxury resort had become a real city before opening day. Harper showed me the projected value. I sat down on a piece of broken sofa. I had tried to create the largest failure of my life. I had accidentally rebuilt a civilization. After Silas was taken away, I expected peace. I received 3 days. On the fourth morning, every dungeon bell in the region rang at once. The sound did not come from towers or gates. It came through the ground, the air, the transport stones, the demon ore, and even the bones of sleeping monsters. Windows shook, potions rippled inside sealed bottles. Ghosts at the inn stopped joking. The basilisk raised its head and stared north. Then the sky above the mountains became dark at noon. Lydia knew the old necromancer records. Harper knew the trade routes. Grant knew several forbidden alchemy texts because he collected books with warning labels. Together, they explained what was happening. Every 100 years, the deep dungeons entered a migration. Dungeon cores were not fixed objects. They grew, split, and moved through underground magical currents. Most remained far below the surface. But during the migration, the strongest cores rose toward the world above, dragging monsters, ruins, traps, and entire dungeon ecosystems with them. The event was called the Black Ascent. The vanished city beneath the ash basin had been buried during the last one. This time, the first wave would reach us in 7 days. No enemy had caused it. No one had chosen our region. The deep currents simply crossed beneath the mountains, and everything living below was coming up. Guilds prepared for mass monster attacks. Towns closed roads. Merchants hid supplies. Adventurers rushed to purchase weapons and potions. Every one of them came to my businesses. The recovery drink sold faster than Grant could bottle it. The cursed mine received orders for more demon ore than it could normally produce in a year. The haunted inn became a command center because spirits could sense dungeon fear before gates opened. The monster farm supplied rare food, batteries, medicine, poison filters, heat glass, living rope, and armored transport animals. The Broken Wagon Company became the only network capable of moving people through unstable routes. The academy failures were requested by every rescue team in the region. My failed businesses had become the foundation of the defense. I should have felt proud. Instead, I saw the problem immediately. If we sold everything at emergency prices, I would become even richer. So I made all essential supplies free. Harper asked whether I was certain. I told her this was finally my chance to lose enough money to matter. She nodded once and opened every warehouse. For several beautiful hours, my fortune fell. Then donations arrived. Adventurers who had survived the transport collapse sent treasure. Guilds contributed stored gold. Farmers delivered crops. Smiths worked without charge because the mine had kept them employed. Guests from the haunted inn paid for rooms they would not use. The restored city offered entire buildings as storage. By sunset, we had received more than we gave away. I stared at the growing piles of supplies. Harper quietly moved the profit report out of reach. There was no time to argue. The Black Ascent began early. A crack opened across the northern plain. It stretched from horizon to horizon, glowing red beneath the soil. Trees tilted toward it. Rivers changed direction. Thousands of small dungeon gates appeared in the air like dark bubbles. The first monsters climbed out. They were not an organized army. They were creatures fleeing worse things below. Stone insects poured from the ground in black waves. Winged worms filled the sky. Pale giants crawled on 6 arms. Floating plants released sparks that turned dirt into glass. Huge shells rolled across the plain with screaming wind trapped inside them. The guild lines broke in minutes. I opened the transport ring. Broken wagons flooded the battlefield. Each carried recovery drinks, demon ore weapons, farm equipment, and academy rescue teams. Crooked gates appeared behind collapsing groups and pulled them to safety. Lydia's spirits marked danger zones with blue fire. Harper directed movement from the restored city using signal towers built from duplicated in-bells. I entered the front line alone. A wave of stone insects covered the ground ahead of me. I duplicated one empty wagon wheel until 1,000 floated in the air. Then I copied their spin and sent them rolling across the plain. The wheels did not crush the insects. They scooped them into their hollow centers and stacked themselves into moving cages. Winged worms dove from above. I copied the sound of the hollow bell and changed gravity sideways. The entire swarm fell across the sky, slammed into a floating gate, and reappeared over the monster farm. The fire chickens chased them for hours. A pale giant swung one arm and released a shockwave that flattened buildings behind me. I duplicated the shockwave before it reached the city, bent the copy around the original, and formed a spinning ring. The two forces chased each other in a circle. I shrank the ring, wrapped it around my fist, and punched the giant in the chest. The stored shockwave erupted inside its stone skin. The creature flew backward through 3 dungeon bubbles and disappeared into the deep current. More giants emerged. I duplicated the first giant's surprised expression as an illusion across the sky. The others hesitated. That was enough for the Academy Club. Their rebuilt sofa had become a full flying platform with demon ore rails, vine snake cables, thunder egg engines, and 3 crystal shell shields. Students launched from it on sticky lines, wrapped the giant's arms, and redirected their attacks into the stone insect waves. The battle looked less like organized defense and more like the world's largest tavern accident. It worked. For 6 hours, we pushed the monsters back. Then the ground opened wider. A dungeon tower rose from the crack. It emerged upside down, point first, with its base buried somewhere below. Floor after floor climbed into the sky. Windows glowed red. Chains hung upward. At the highest point, a gate the size of a city opened beneath the clouds. Something looked through. It had no face, only a dark helmet shape surrounding one white flame. Its shoulders were wider than the tower. Long hands gripped the edge of the gate. The deep dungeon ruler had arrived. Every smaller monster stopped moving. The white flame turned toward me. A pressure heavier than the cursed mountain fell across the plain. Adventurers dropped to their knees. Wagons cracked. Gates flickered. Even my duplicated objects began dissolving. The creature was not canceling my power. Its presence was simply crushing weak magic out of the air. I lifted one hand. Then I duplicated my own heartbeat. The same trick that had confused the stone wolves now spread across the battlefield. One heartbeat became 10, then 1,000, then 1,000,000. Each beat carried a tiny pulse of my mana. The ruler's pressure crushed them. I created more. The sky filled with invisible rhythm. Every pulse broke. Every broken pulse released a smaller piece of mana. Instead of resisting the pressure, I fed it so many tiny copies that it could not remove them all. My power stabilized. Then I copied the pressure itself. A second invisible weight fell from above, aimed at the ruler. The giant's hands slipped from the gate. For the first time, the white flame moved with surprise. I used the moment to launch myself upward. I duplicated the recoil of Grant's strongest explosive drink beneath my feet. The ground vanished in a red flash. I crossed the battlefield, past the upside-down tower, and struck the giant's helmet with both heels. The impact sounded like a mountain breaking. The creature fell backward into its own gate. I followed. The deep dungeon closed behind us. Inside, there was no sky. There were endless staircases descending in every direction. Towers hung upside down and sideways. Rivers of white fire flowed between them. Millions of doors opened and closed along black walls. Far below, something enormous pulsed like a buried sun. The ruler landed on a staircase and rose to full height. Outside the gate, only its upper body had fit through. Here, it stood as tall as a fortress. Its legs were wrapped in chains connected to the pulsing core below. Each step caused a dungeon door to open somewhere in the distance. I understood then that the creature was not leading the black ascent. It was trying to escape it. The chains dragged the ruler upward whenever the core migrated. The giant had reached the surface because it was bound to the deepest dungeon, not because it wanted to invade. That did not make it friendly. It swung one hand. 5 staircases shattered. I duplicated the falling pieces and made them orbit me as a stone shield. The ruler punched through the shield. I copied the punch's forward force, placed it beneath one floating tower, and launched the entire structure into its shoulder. The tower exploded. The ruler barely moved. White fire flowed from the cracks in its helmet. It spread across the staircases, erasing every object it touched. I copied the path of the fire rather than the fire itself. Hundreds of empty paths appeared beside it. The flames split, following all possible routes at once. Their power thinned until each stream became no hotter than a candle. I gathered the tiny flames into a sphere and threw it at the chains. They did not melt. The deep core pulsed. Every door in the dungeon opened at once. Monsters poured through. Not hundreds, not thousands. A living flood filled the staircases. Creatures made from iron roots, glass bones, burning cloth, liquid shadows, crystal mouths, and spinning horns rushed toward me and the ruler alike. I had no reason to protect the giant. So naturally, I jumped onto its head. The ruler tried to grab me. I copied the smooth surface of its helmet and spread it across my coat. Its fingers slipped off. Then I duplicated the sound of the farm's food bell inside the helmet. The ruler staggered, confused. I used its shoulders as a platform and began directing the monster flood. Every creature that jumped became a copied jump beneath another creature. Every charge became a launch. Every bite became a snapping trap made from empty force. Monsters crashed into each other, flew through doors, and landed on distant staircases. The ruler realized what I was doing. It swept both arms through the crowd while I redirected the force. Together, without agreement, we cleared a path toward the deep core. We descended. The deeper we went, the stranger the dungeon became. Gravity changed with every staircase. Time moved at different speeds behind different doors. Some rooms were frozen in a single second. Others had aged into dust. One corridor contained a storm that had been falling for 1,000 years. Another held a forest growing upside down from a lake ceiling. I marked everything with duplicate gates. The ruler tore through obstacles with raw strength. I turned the broken pieces into bridges. When white fire beasts surrounded us, I copied their heat into cold shadows and trapped them between temperatures. When iron root monsters bound the ruler's legs, I duplicated the idea of a loose knot until every root untied itself. At one point, a glass serpent swallowed me whole. Inside its body, I found a spiral tunnel filled with reflected magic. The serpent expected me to be dissolved. I duplicated its stomach exit. Then I created 100 exits along its back. The serpent became a magical fountain. Everything it had eaten during its long life erupted into the dungeon. Weapons, bones, treasure, furniture, a small house, several boats, and one still living monster that immediately ran away. I emerged riding the house roof. The ruler caught the roof in one hand and threw me toward the core. I took that as cooperation. We reached the lowest visible layer. The pulsing object below was not a sun, it was an egg. A black shell surrounded a white center. Dungeon currents flowed into cracks across its surface. Every pulse pushed the entire deep world upward. The black ascent was not a migration of many cores. It was the birth movement of one enormous core creature. When the egg hatched, the rising dungeons would burst through the surface all at once. The ruler's chains connected directly to the shell. It had been placed there as a guardian, prisoner, or food source. I could not tell which. I landed on the egg. The shell was larger than the restored city. I touched it and tried to understand. Pain crossed my mind. Images arrived too fast to be memories. Underground seas, dead worlds, dungeons growing through empty space, core creatures nesting inside planets, feeding on magic, then hatching and carrying entire dungeon ecosystems away. This egg had slept for ages. The Black Ascent was the final stage before birth. Destroying the shell would release the creature early. Letting it hatch would tear the region apart. The ruler landed beside me and struck the chain around one wrist against the shell. The meaning was clear. Break the chains and it might help. I did not trust it. Then again, I had built my fortune by trusting cursed mines, haunted inns, unstable potions, monster farms, broken gates, and failed students. My standards were flexible. I studied the chain. It was made from compressed dungeon routes. Each link was a locked path folded around itself. Silas's staff had used a tiny imitation of the same magic. I duplicated one link. The copy appeared open. The ruler pulled. One chain broke. The dungeon screamed. The egg cracked. A white hand pushed through the shell. It was long enough to cross a city street. Fingers unfolded into smaller hands. Each smaller hand opened a mouth filled with light. The core creature was waking. I copied the open link again and again, breaking the ruler's remaining chains. The giant stood free for the first time in centuries. It raised both arms. I expected it to attack me. Instead, it grabbed the white hand and pulled. The creature inside pulled back. The egg split wider. White fire flooded the dungeon. I duplicated the ruler's grip and spread it across the shell. Thousands of invisible hands held the cracks closed. The hatching creature pushed harder. Staircases shattered. Doors flew open. Entire dungeon layers tilted toward the egg. I needed power beyond anything I had copied before, so I reached through every transport mark connected to my businesses. I felt the cursed mine first. The 2 crystals still fought inside the mountain, producing demon ore from hostile pressure. I copied that pressure. I felt the monster farm, where thunder rabbits raced beneath heat glass and the basilisk slept in a field of evolved grain. I copied their stored energy. I felt the haunted inn, crowded with dream spirits and backward flames. I copied the fear they had learned to control. I felt Grant's potion shop, where thousands of bottles held recovery, heat, speed, mana, and every accidental effect he had created. I copied the active mixtures. I felt the Academy Club above, fighting to keep the surface gate open. I copied their combined technique. I felt Harper standing at the transport ring, holding every route together while the sky broke around her. I copied the stability of her signal rhythm. All 6 failures answered me. Demon ore pressure wrapped around my bones. Thunder energy filled my muscles. Dream fire protected my mind. Recovery magic repaired me faster than the power could tear me apart. The Academy cage formed around the egg. Harper's rhythm aligned every gate. I rose above the shell, surrounded by rotating rings of red drink, blue lightning, black metal, silver water, ghost flame, sticky light, broken wagon parts, and thousands of open doors. The ruler looked up at me. For the first time, the white flame inside its helmet lowered like a respectful bow. Then the egg hatched. The shell exploded. The shell did not break into pieces. It became pieces. Every fragment transformed into a different dungeon. One became a burning castle. Another unfolded into a frozen ocean. A third grew into a forest of metal trees. Thousands of new layers burst outward, each expanding faster than thought. The hatchling rose from the center. Its body had no fixed shape. White arms connected to towers. Mouths opened inside gates. Wings formed from staircases. A long spine of glowing doors twisted through the darkness. Wherever it moved, the dungeon rebuilt itself around the movement. The free ruler grabbed one wing. The hatchling opened a mouth in its palm and bit through the ruler's arm. White fire sprayed across the egg chamber. I copied the ruler's missing arm before it fell away. The copy appeared attached to the wound, but I made it from demon ore pressure rather than flesh. Black metal formed from shoulder to fist. The ruler stared at the new arm, closed its fingers, and punched the hatchling hard enough to fold 3 dungeon layers together. The creature screamed through every door. The sound reached the surface. Above us, the northern mountains cracked. I could sense Harper through the transport marks. The black ascent was accelerating. Dungeons rose beneath towns, roads, and rivers. The guilds could hold the smaller monsters, but they could not stop the land itself from turning into labyrinths. We had to force the hatchling back into a stable shape. I attacked its hunger. Grant's recovery drinks worked by convincing the body it had more usable strength than it believed. I copied that sensation, expanded it, and poured it into the creature. For 1 second, every mouth closed. The hatchling felt full, its expanding layers slowed. Then it understood the trick and became angry. 1,000 hands pointed at me. White beams crossed the chamber. I duplicated the haunted inn's room 13. The room appeared around me 1,000 times, nested inside itself. Each beam entered a room, crossed it, entered the next copy, and continued through endless identical space. The attack never reached the center. The 13 comedy ghosts appeared by accident. They looked at the hatchling. The hatchling looked at them. One ghost threw a pillow. The creature destroyed all 1,000 rooms. I emerged behind the ruler, covered in feathers and slightly offended. The hatchling's body grew larger. It absorbed the broken rooms, the white beams, and the floating dungeon fragments. The false fullness had lasted only a moment, but that moment taught me something. The creature could be satisfied. It simply needed enough to eat. I opened every gate I had marked during the descent. The hatchling saw them and lunged. Doors were food. Routes were food. Dungeon layers were food. It stretched through the network, swallowing staircases, towers, rivers, monsters, traps, and core fragments. I kept opening paths. The creature chased them upward. The ruler realized my plan and grabbed the hatchling's tail, forcing it to move through the routes instead of expanding sideways. I placed a duplicated transport pole ahead. The hatchling became a river of white dungeon matter rushing through its own world. We climbed toward the surface. Every layer we crossed collapsed behind us. At the glass serpent's tunnel, I opened 100 exits. The hatchling filled all of them. At the ancient storm corridor, I duplicated 1,000 years of falling rain and washed burning fragments from its body. At the upside-down forest, I copied every root and wrapped them around the creature's spine. At the White Fire River, the ruler used its demon ore arm to hold the current open, while I sent the hatchling through the center. The deep dungeon fought to keep its child. Doors snapped shut. Stairs rotated. Gravity reversed. Time pockets opened in our path. I copied the Academy Club's sticky spell across the transport route. Every second connected to the next. The time pockets could not separate us. We moved through frozen rooms and accelerated halls without losing the sequence. The hatchling reached the surface gate, then it stopped. Beyond the gate waited the world above, filled with more magic than it had ever tasted. Cities, people, forests, rivers, dungeons, artifacts, monsters, and millions of living bodies. Every mouth opened. The hunger hit me like a physical wave. The creature tore free of the ruler and surged upward. I grabbed one glowing door on its spine. The hatchling carried me through the gate. We emerged above the northern plain. The sky had become a dungeon. Black towers floated between clouds. Rivers ran vertically. Monster swarms circled broken mountains. Gates covered the horizon. The Academy platform fought beneath us, smaller than a leaf. Transport wagons moved in blue lines across the land, rescuing people from rising ruins. The hatchling unfolded. Its wings covered the sun. Each wing became a different landscape. One held a desert, one held a dark sea. Another carried a city of empty towers. Its arms extended into the clouds. Its mouths began pulling magic from everything below. Spells failed. Demon ore dimmed. Thunder eggs stopped sparking. Dream spirits faded. Adventurers collapsed as mana left their bodies. The creature was going to feed on the entire region. I let go. As I fell, I duplicated myself. Not my mind, not my soul. Only the physical pattern of my body, the mana flow stored in my coat, and the motion of falling through the sky. One empty copy became 10. 10 became 1,000. 1,000 became 100,000. The sky filled with coals. Every copy carried a different glowing object. Recovery bottles, demon ore blades, thunder eggs, blue lanterns, broken teleport stones, training spheres, black crystals, empty dungeon keys. The hatchling could not tell which one was real. Every mouth attacked. White beams swept across the copies. Thousands vanished. Thousands more appeared. I copied their destroyed momentum and turned it into upward force. The surviving bodies shot toward the hatchling from every direction. We landed across its wings, arms, towers, and gates. Then every copy opened a transport mark. The hatchling's hunger reached through all of them. It found my businesses. It found the potion shop with endless bottles. It found the cursed mine with self-producing ore. It found the haunted inn with multiplying spirits. It found the monster farm with evolving crops and creatures. It found the transport company with thousands of routes. It found the Academy Club's training dungeon with copied challenges. 6 endless meals. The creature pulled harder. That was the trap. I had not connected the gates to the real places. I had connected them to duplicates stored inside the restored city's ancient dungeon machine before I collapsed it into the dark fruit. The fruit contained compressed copies of every failure I had used during the battle. Empty structures, repeated ingredients, false rooms, broken paths, training monsters, potion effects without bodies. An entire economic empire reduced to magical patterns. I threw the fruit into the hatchling's largest mouth. It swallowed. The compressed copies unfolded inside it. A potion shop appeared in one wing. Then 1,000 potion shops appeared inside the first. A cursed mine opened inside its spine. Every stone wolf became demon ore, then created another wolf, then became more ore. The haunted inn unfolded through its lungs. Room 13 copied itself every time a white flame passed through. Monster crops grew across its arms. Each bite made them evolve into forms harder to digest. Broken transport routes opened between its mouths, sending swallowed matter back to the beginning. The Academy training course formed around its core and changed gravity every time it tried to move. The hatchling had consumed a meal that duplicated faster than it could digest. Its body swelled. Wings folded inward, towers bent, mouths coughed up wagons, blue fire, spicy grain, stone wolves, and hundreds of red bottles. I landed on its head. The creature tried to absorb me. I touched its surface and finally understood the hunger completely. It was not evil. It did not hate the world. It was a newborn built to gather a dungeon ecosystem and leave. Its hunger had one purpose: collect enough stable magic to survive the space between worlds. The deep dungeon had grown too large around it. The hatchling could not separate food from home. If it rose naturally, it would rip everything nearby into itself. I had given it too much food, but the food was empty. It needed stability, not quantity. I looked down at the free ruler. It stood on a floating tower, watching. The chains had bound it to the egg for centuries. Its magic had stabilized the shell. That was why the hatchling had bitten its arm. The ruler was the one thing it recognized as complete nourishment. The ruler understood at the same moment. It raised its demon ore fist. I shook my head. I was not going to feed it a living guardian. I duplicated the ruler's stabilizing pressure. One copy was too weak, so I created another. Then another. 10,000 dark outlines of the ruler appeared around the hatchling. Not full bodies, only the magical weight that had held the egg together. The creature stopped struggling. Its mouths closed one by one. The endless businesses inside it continued unfolding, but the stabilizing pressure compressed them into a new shell. Potion shops became red veins, demon ore mines became black bones, haunted rooms became dream chambers, monster farms became living gardens, transport routes became nerves, the academy course became a rotating defensive layer. My failures rebuilt the hatchling from the inside. The giant creature began shrinking. Wings became walls, arms became towers, mouths became doors. The massive body folded inward around the duplicated ruler pressure. I stood on its surface as the sky rushed past. A creature larger than the mountains became the size of a city, then a fortress, then a house, then a wagon. Finally, it became a white sphere no larger than a pumpkin, covered in tiny black doors. I caught it with both hands. The black ascent stopped. Across the horizon, rising dungeons froze. Monster gates remained open, but no new layers emerged. Rivers settled. Towers stopped climbing. The pull on mana vanished. Adventurers rose. Dream spirits brightened. Thunder eggs sparked again. The free ruler descended beside me on a staircase of white fire. Its original arm remained gone. The demon ore copy held firm. It looked at the sphere, then it looked at the surface world. I expected it to demand the hatchling. Instead, it reached into the white flame of its helmet and removed a small black key. The ruler placed the key in my hand. A gate opened behind it, leading back into the deep dungeon. Before leaving, it struck the demon ore fist against its chest. I copied the gesture. The ruler disappeared below. The gate closed. I fell the final 100 feet because I had forgotten to make a platform. The Academy Club caught me with the remaining half of their sofa. We crashed through a monster nest, bounced off a crystal shell shield, rolled across a red foam river, and stopped beside Harper's command wagon. Grant climbed from beneath a broken drink barrel. Lydia floated down inside a circle of spirits. Harper looked at the white sphere in my hands. She asked whether it was dangerous. A tiny door opened on the sphere. A small white hand reached out and stole one of Grant's bottles. The door closed. I told Harper it was probably fine. She did not believe me. The crisis was not over simply because the ascent had stopped. Thousands of monsters remained on the surface. Dungeons had risen through roads and fields. Towns were cut off. The northern plain had become a maze of ruins, rivers, forests, towers, and gates. But now the disaster could be solved. Harper turned every transport stone toward rescue routes. Grant converted the potion shops into field kitchens and recovery stations. Lydia sent spirits through unstable dungeons to guide trapped people. The monster farm received captured creatures and transformed them into part of the ecosystem instead of killing them. The Academy Club led clearing teams into the new layers. I duplicated bridges, shelters, wells, tools, and supply wagons faster than the workers could place them. For 3 days, I barely slept. I crossed the region through broken gates, appearing wherever the situation looked worst. When a floating ruin began falling toward a town, I duplicated its upward momentum and parked it in the clouds. When an underground sea burst through a road, I copied the haunted inn's stretched rooms and poured the entire flood into an endless bath corridor. Lydia later complained that several guests had found fish in the tubs. When a forest of iron trees grew around a village, I duplicated the monster farm's vine snakes and taught them to weave the branches into houses. When a dungeon train made from bone raced toward the restored city, I copied 12,000 broken wagons, linked them into a spiral track, and sent the train around the city 3 times until it ran out of anger. When a mountain-sized shell monster rolled toward the cursed mine, I woke the basilisk, duplicated its petrifying gaze into a ramp, and made the shell jump over the entire mountain. It landed in an empty valley and became a new transport station. Every problem became material for something useful. The new dungeons contained rare herbs, ores, creatures, ruins, and routes. People who had lost homes moved into the restored ancient city. Adventurers founded camps around stable gates. Smiths used demon ore to reinforce bridges. Farmers planted evolved crops in dungeon soil. Necromancers opened spirit clinics inside calm dream zones. My businesses expanded without me ordering them to. The recovery drink became the standard supply for every major guild. The mine produced weapons that could survive deep dungeon pressure. The haunted inn opened small branches near dangerous gates so exhausted adventurers could rest under spirit protection. The monster farm became a research valley where new creatures were raised instead of hunted. The transport company mapped the frozen ascent routes and connected distant regions faster than ever. The Academy Club graduated early. They refused offers from elite teams and stayed together as an independent rescue unit. Their official symbol was a sofa flying through a broken gate. I approved. 1 month after the Black Ascent, the region was safer and wealthier than before it began. The guilds called it a miracle. The merchants called it a new age. The adventurers called me the dungeon billionaire. I hated that name immediately. Grant printed it on recovery bottles. Lydia taught the ghosts to chant it whenever I entered the inn. Harper claimed she had tried to stop them. She was lying. The haunted bell rang every time she said it. I returned to the mansion where my second life had begun. The window from the first assassination attempt had been repaired years ago, but I could still remember the needle stopping in front of my face. I had wanted to become poor so no one would target me. Instead, I had become too powerful to target carelessly. Silas sat in the city jail behind dungeon locks he could not open. His criminal network had collapsed after the Ash Basin battle. The captured members revealed hidden bases, stolen goods, and monster cages. The guards recovered enough wealth to compensate many of the people they had harmed. I visited him once. He expected me to threaten him. I brought a recovery drink. He refused it. I duplicated the bottle until the entire cell was filled from floor to ceiling. Then I left. The guards told me he eventually drank one. He liked the grape flavor. That victory should have satisfied me. The Black Ascent should have convinced me to stop trying to destroy my wealth. The lives saved by the businesses should have made me accept that money was only dangerous when useless. I understood all of that. I also looked at the latest account report and saw a number so large that Harper had started using magical notation. My old dream returned. A quiet cabin, a small garden, no assassins, unlimited pie. I decided on one final attempt. This time, I would not buy a shop, mine, inn, farm, company, club, wasteland, or dungeon. I would invest in something completely impossible to monetize. I would fund an expedition into the empty sky. The empty sky was a region above the western storm belt, where flying magic stopped working. No islands floated there. No birds crossed it. No known dungeon routes entered it. Airships that approached lost lift and fell into the clouds. Exploration guilds had studied the edge for decades and found nothing worth collecting. That was exactly what I needed. I announced that I would build the largest flying expedition fleet ever created, send it into a sky with no destination, and provide every service free of charge. Harper read the plan, then she read it again. She pointed at the section describing 200 airships made from demon ore, heat glass, vine snake cables, crystal shell armor, thunder egg engines, haunted cabins, potion fountains, and cracked transport stones. She asked how this would make me poor when every material came from businesses I owned. I told her I would pay those businesses full market price. She pointed out that the money would still belong to me. I told her I would pay triple. She pointed out that the businesses would expand production, employ more people, and return even greater profit later. I told her I did not appreciate negativity. Grant designed the engines. His first model used recovery drink vapor to restore its own power while flying. It ran for 3 days without fuel, then became energetic enough to chase him around the workshop. Lydia designed the cabins. Dream spirits adjusted the rooms to match each passenger's comfort. Anyone afraid of heights saw a normal countryside outside the windows. Anyone who loved danger saw the clouds filled with dragons, even when nothing was there. Harper designed everything that actually needed to function. The Academy Rescue Unit insisted on joining. Their sofa had survived a dungeon collapse, a public match, the Ash Basin, and the Black Ascent. It now had 4 engines, 6 shields, a folding kitchen, a monster cage, and a front bell shaped like my annoyed face. I ordered them to remove the bell. They added a second one. The flagship was called the Empty Wallet. I chose the name myself. It was a massive airship shaped like a long black arrow. Demon ore ribs held crystal shell plates. Heat glass wings stored sunlight. Thunder eggs powered 12 rotating engines. Broken teleport stones formed a ring around the hull, ready to move sections of the ship through danger. The haunted inn supplied a hallway inside that was longer than the vessel itself. At the center, behind 7 shields, I placed the white sphere from the Black Ascent. The tiny doors across its surface opened whenever Grant carried drinks nearby. Small white hands continued stealing bottles. The sphere had consumed enough recovery drink to supply an army, but it never changed size. I called it storage. Grant called it adorable. Harper called it an unknown deep dungeon organism with world-destroying potential. Lydia called it thirsty. We departed at sunrise. The fleet rose above the restored city, while thousands watched from below. Airships formed long lines through the clouds. Academy platforms flew between them. Monster farm creatures carried supplies. Transport wagons hung beneath balloons in case the engines failed. I stood on the flagship's highest rail, with my coat snapping in the wind. It was dramatic for exactly 12 seconds. Then a fire chicken escaped from the cargo deck and struck me in the back. I fell off the ship. The crowd screamed. I duplicated the chicken, grabbed both birds, and used their flame bursts like twin engines. We flew around the flagship once, landed on the bow, and accidentally set the expedition flag on fire. The crowd cheered even louder. Grant called it a perfect launch. We crossed the western mountains before noon. The ordinary sky ended beyond them. Ahead waited a wall of permanent storm clouds stretching from the ocean to the upper atmosphere. Lightning moved inside like bright veins. The wind pulled in several directions at once. Normal airships turned away there. Our fleet accelerated. The first wind shear hit like a giant blade. I duplicated the flagship's left wing and placed the copy above the fleet as a shield. The wind sliced it into pieces. I copied the pieces, flattened them, and made thousands of smaller fins. They attached to every ship, turning independently to match the changing air. The fleet entered the storm. Day vanished, rain fell upward, lightning moved sideways, clouds became solid without warning. Invisible gaps opened beneath the ships, thunder struck from below. The empty wallet's engines failed after 3 minutes. I had never been happier. Then Grant opened the recovery vapor valves. The engines restarted twice as strong. I became less happy. A solid cloud wall appeared ahead. The flagship could not turn in time. I copied the basilisk's petrifying gaze stored in a farm tool and fired it through the bow. The cloud turned into a gray tunnel. We entered at full speed. Behind us, the copied fins carved matching tunnels for the rest of the fleet. A lightning river crossed our path. I duplicated the metal rails on the deck, stretched them forward, and turned them into a giant fork. The lightning struck the rails. Thunder energy rushed through the ship toward the engines. The empty wallet became too fast. We shot ahead of the fleet, broke through 3 cloud walls, spun around a thunder column, and entered a region where gravity pointed upward. Everyone on deck fell into the sky. Harper grabbed a vine cable. Grant grabbed Harper's boot. Lydia's spirits grabbed Grant. I grabbed the ship. Then I duplicated the chain of people until 100 empty copies formed a rope between the deck and the real group. I pulled them down, copied the ship's original gravity, and spread it across the hull. The flagship stabilized upside down. The rest of the fleet entered the region and appeared above us, also upside down. For several minutes, 200 airships sailed beneath a black ocean of clouds, with their masts pointing toward each other. Lightning flashed between the fleets. Floating rain gathered into spheres around the decks. The Academy sofa raced past us, completely sideways. The students waved. I pretended not to see the face bells. The deeper we traveled, the weaker flying magic became. The thunder engines lost power. Heat glass stopped releasing sunlight. Even the storm winds slowed. We had reached the true empty sky. Every airship began falling. There was no ground below, only endless white darkness. I activated the cracked transport stones. Nothing happened. For the first time since starting the expedition, the situation looked exactly as bad as promised. Harper asked whether I had a plan. I looked at 200 falling ships, thousands of people, dead engines, silent gates, and a sky where magic could not hold anything up. I said yes. Then I made one. Magic had stopped supporting us, but physical forces still existed. The ships were falling because gravity pulled them downward. I understood gravity very well by then. I duplicated the fall. Instead of creating upward force, I copied the downward movement of every ship and applied it to the empty sky beneath us. The air fell faster than the fleet. Pressure built below the hulls. 200 airships landed on a descending ocean of wind. We were still falling, but the sky was falling faster. Relative to the air around us, we floated. Grant stared over the rail. Lydia laughed. Harper wrote something in her notebook that I was certain would become a warning for future employees. I extended the falling airfield forward. The fleet sailed across it like ships on an invisible river. No flying magic, no lift spells. Only the entire atmosphere dropping beneath us at carefully controlled speed. We had entered a place where airships could not fly, so I made the sky carry them. After 6 hours, the storm vanished behind us. Ahead, there was nothing. No sun, no stars, no clouds. A pale, empty space surrounded the fleet in every direction. Light existed without a source. Sound traveled only a few feet before disappearing. Compass needles spun. Transport marks showed no destination. The empty sky was not part of the normal atmosphere. It was a gap between the world and something above it. Lydia released a dream spirit from her lantern. The spirit drifted forward, then split into two. One copy continued ahead. The other moved backward without turning. I had not duplicated it. The space itself was repeating objects. A loose rope floated from the deck and became 3 ropes. A drop of water became a line of identical drops. Grant threw an empty bottle overboard. It became 100 bottles, then vanished. I finally understood why flight magic failed. The empty sky duplicated magical instructions until they canceled themselves. A lift spell became countless overlapping lifts in different directions. A gate created endless destinations. A compass received every possible north. The place behaved like my power without my control. That made it dangerous. It also made me curious. I created a coin in my palm and tossed it ahead. The coin became 10, then 1,000, then a shining river of metal stretching into the distance. I understood the copies. I took control of them. The river stopped growing. Then every coin turned edge first and pointed toward the same place. Something in the empty sky was pulling duplicated matter. We followed. The fleet traveled for a full day without seeing anything else. Supplies remained easy because 1 loaf of bread left outside became 1,000. Grant nearly cried when a single recovery bottle duplicated into an ocean of red liquid. Harper made him collect every drop before it touched the engines. I tried throwing gold coins into the empty space. They duplicated until a mountain of gold floated beside the fleet. My plan to become poor had entered a region that literally multiplied money. I stopped throwing coins. At the end of the second day, a black line appeared ahead. It widened into an island. Not a floating island, a flat piece of dark land standing vertically in the sky. Ruined buildings covered its surface. Roads ran upward and downward. Trees grew sideways. Waterfalls crossed the air and returned to their beginnings. At the center stood a white tower shaped like a needle. The river of duplicated coins pointed toward it. Every ship alarm rang. The empty sky began copying the fleet. 1 empty wallet appeared beside us, then 10, then hundreds. The copies had no people inside, but their engines turned, their weapons activated. Their transport stones opened blank gates. Empty versions of the Academy sofa swarmed through the air with silent face bells. These were not mirror enemies. They were mindless repeated objects, dangerous because the empty sky continued the last instruction stored in each machine. Our ships had been built to advance through danger. The empty copies advanced toward us. I ordered the real fleet to stop. The copies did not. They followed the instruction created at launch, moved toward the expedition target. We were now between them and the tower. 200 copied flagships fired demon ore harpoons. I duplicated the distance between the fleets. The harpoons flew without arriving. Copied transport gates opened beneath us. Empty wagons fell through. I copied the haunted inn's insulting portraits across the blank sails, giving each empty ship a face that shouted at the others. The copies had no minds to offend, but their spirit guidance runes reacted to the noise and turned toward new threats. The empty fleet attacked itself. Harpoons crossed. Crystal shields shattered. Thunder engines collided. Copies broke apart and duplicated again. The battle became worse every second. Destroying a ship created hundreds of repeated fragments. Each fragment remembered movement. Demon ore plates cut through the sky. Engine rings spun like saws. Face bells rang from every direction. I jumped from the flagship. The falling air river carried me toward the chaos. I copied 1 broken wagon, opened its interior into a stretched haunted hallway, and began collecting fragments, plates, engines, cables, bells, sails, rails, and entire empty ships vanished through the wagon doors. The empty sky duplicated the wagon. Good. Thousands of collection wagons appeared. I changed the last stored instruction inside the original. Collect every unoccupied copy. The new wagons inherited it. They spread through the battlefield like a school of hungry boxes. Empty airships disappeared into their impossible interiors. Loose fragments were swallowed. Silent sofas flew into wagon doors and stacked themselves along endless hallways. Within minutes, the sky became clear. Then the wagons turned toward the real fleet. They had been told to collect every unoccupied copy. Several real ships had empty storage decks. The command was not precise enough. I landed on the lead wagon, kicked open its front panel, and changed the instruction to collect itself. Every duplicated wagon folded into another wagon. Thousands became hundreds. Hundreds became 10. 10 became 1. The final wagon tried to climb inside its own door. Space twisted. The wagon vanished with a small popping sound. Grant watched from the flagship. He asked where everything had gone. I told him somewhere with too many sofas. The white tower reacted. A pulse crossed the vertical island. The empty sky stopped duplicating random objects. Every loose copy vanished at once. The mountain of gold disappeared. The red drink ocean faded. The repeated ropes and water drops were gone. The tower had taken control. Then the vertical island rotated beneath us. Roads became floors. Buildings became walls. Waterfalls turned into rivers. The island settled horizontally under the fleet, creating the first solid land anyone had found in the empty sky. Our ships descended. The moment the flagship touched the black ground, figures emerged from the ruins. They were members of Silas's scattered network, who had escaped earlier arrests by entering unstable sky routes. They had been trapped on the island for years, surviving on duplicated food and collecting whatever the empty sky produced. Without Silas, they had formed small groups around the White Tower. Now they saw my fleet as a path home, and a treasure to steal. They surrounded the landing field with copied weapons, copied monster cages, and copied magic bombs. There were thousands of them, but most were repetitions created by the empty sky. The real criminals hid among the empty bodies. Their leader demanded the flagship and the transport stones. I looked across the army. Every copy wore the same clothes, carried the same weapon, and repeated the same breathing pattern as its original. None were illusionary fighters with copied skills. They were empty physical bodies following simple stored motions, like puppets. Finding the real people should have been difficult. I opened a bottle of recovery drink. The smell spread across the field. The empty bodies did not react. The real criminals did. Years in the empty sky had left them exhausted and hungry. Their eyes moved toward the bottle for a fraction of a second. That was enough. I duplicated the bottle and threw copies toward every real person. The drinks landed at their feet. The puppet army continued staring forward. The originals looked down. The Academy Rescue Unit launched from the flagship. Sticky lights marked the real targets. Demon ore cables wrapped around weapons. Defensive barriers pushed puppets aside without destroying them. The students moved through thousands of copies, capturing only the living people. Some criminals fought back. One activated a copied monster cage. A storm beast exploded onto the field, shaped like a bird made from lightning and cloud. It spread wings wider than the flagship and screamed hard enough to lift buildings. I duplicated its scream into a circle around it. The sound pushed inward from every direction. The storm beast compressed into a ball of thunder. I copied the ball, made 12 more, and placed them inside the empty wallet's engines. The flagship had free fuel for the return trip. Another criminal triggered a chain of magic bombs. The empty sky copied the explosions before they finished. Thousands of fire spheres appeared around the island. I opened stretched-in rooms inside each sphere. The explosions entered rooms with no visible end. Lydia later converted them into permanent fireplaces for the expedition camp. The real criminals tried to retreat into the White Tower. I let them. Everyone ran through the same door. I copied the jail courtyard transport mark onto the floor inside. They emerged from the tower directly into custody back home, along with several confused puppets and enough duplicated weapons to fill a warehouse. The guards sent a message asking me to stop delivering large groups without warning. I promised to try. The bell at the haunted inn rang from hundreds of miles away because I was lying. With the island secure, we entered the White Tower. The interior had no stairs. A single round chamber stretched upward farther than the eye could see. Floating symbols represented objects copied by the empty sky over centuries. Ships, birds, clouds, spells, stones, monsters, ruins, and people. At the center floated a clear crystal. The white sphere beneath my coat began shaking. Tiny doors opened across it. Small hands pointed toward the crystal. The tower and the hatchling sphere were related. Lydia studied the symbols and realized the vertical island had once been a deep dungeon vessel, like the creature that nearly hatched during the Black Ascent. It had reached the empty sky long ago and died before leaving the world. The White Tower was its storage organ, still duplicating supplies for a journey that never happened. The empty sky was not naturally empty. The dead vessel had consumed the magic around it for centuries, turning the region into a silent gap. Its storage crystal remained active. The moment our fleet arrived, it began copying us as replacement parts. Destroying the crystal would release centuries of stored duplication at once. Every copied storm, ship, monster, weapon, and dungeon fragment could appear together. Leaving it active would eventually drain the fleet and anyone who settled on the island. I considered feeding it to the hatchling sphere. A tiny hand reached from my coat and gave me a thumbs-down gesture. That was new. I touched the clear crystal. Its stored information entered my mind. The dead vessel had not failed because it lacked power. It had failed because it could not choose a destination. The empty sky repeated every direction. The vessel tried to travel north, south, east, west, upward, and downward at once. It tore itself apart and became the island. The White Tower continued waiting for one stable path. I had a black key from the deep ruler. I placed it against the crystal. One dark door appeared in the air. Unlike the cracked transport gates, this door did not show another dungeon. It showed blue sky, a shining ocean, and the edge of land covered in enormous silver trees. The tower had found a destination beyond the empty sky. Every symbol in the chamber began moving toward the door. The dead vessel tried to rebuild itself. The island shook. Ruined buildings lifted from the ground. Roads peeled upward. Black stone folded around the tower. The landing field tilted. Our airships slid toward the edge. The clear crystal pulled harder. It wanted to use the fleet as missing parts. Demon ore plates tore from the flagship. Thunder engines flew from their mounts. Haunted cabins stretched out of the hull. Monster cages opened. The Academy sofa lost one face bell, which I considered an improvement. I could have closed the black door. That would leave the empty sky unchanged. Instead, I decided to finish the dead vessel's journey. I duplicated the entire island. For 1 second, a second vertical landmass appeared above us. The copy had no living people, no real airships, and no hatchling sphere. It contained only black stone, ruined buildings, roads, trees, water, and the white tower's missing structure. The storage crystal grabbed it. The copied island folded around the original tower. Walls became wings, roads became veins, buildings became scales. Rivers entered transparent channels. The black land curved into a gigantic vessel shaped like a long whale, with a city on its back. Our fleet settled into open docks along the sides. The empty wallet became the vessel's central command ship. Other airships connected to fins, towers, and transport rings. The haunted inn hallways linked cabins across the entire structure. Farm vines tied loose sections together. Demon ore pressure stabilized the hull. Grant's recovery vapor restarted the ancient engines. The dead sky vessel lived again. It opened one enormous eye beneath the white tower. The black door widened. Beyond it waited the distant ocean and silver forest. Harper stood beside me in the command chamber. She asked whether I still intended to make the expedition free. I said yes. She told me the vessel could transport entire cities through the empty sky, open routes to an unknown continent, produce unlimited basic materials from stored patterns, and carry more cargo than every ship in the western ports combined. I said that sounded expensive to operate. She told me the vessel created its own fuel. I said maintenance would be terrible. She pointed toward the Academy Rescue Unit, already repairing the outer fins while riding their sofa. I said the unknown continent might contain nothing valuable. The black door widened enough to reveal mountains made from blue crystal behind the silver forest. Grant pressed his face against the window. Lydia's spirits began dancing. Harper handed me a projected profit report she had somehow prepared during the transformation. I did not read it. The vessel moved through the door. For the first time, we crossed the empty sky instead of floating inside it. The transition lasted 1 heartbeat. Then sunlight flooded the city deck. We emerged above an ocean so clear that enormous ruins were visible on the seafloor. Silver trees covered the shore, each leaf holding a drop of liquid mana. Blue crystal mountains rose in the distance. Flying creatures circled waterfalls that flowed upward into clouds. Unopened dungeon gates stood along the cliffs like giant stone eyes. No maps showed this place. No guild had reached it. No merchant had claimed its resources. My investment in nothing had discovered an entire continent. The expedition crews cheered. Harper began planning docks. Grant collected silver leaves and immediately caused a small explosion. Lydia followed spirits toward the underwater ruins. The Academy platform flew off to rescue Grant from the explosion he insisted was controlled. I stood alone at the front of the vessel. Below me, the ocean reflected the black city whale crossing the sky. Behind me, the empty sky door remained open, creating a stable route home. Ahead, the new continent stretched beyond the horizon. I had tried to waste my fortune on a journey with no destination. I had created the greatest transport route in history. Again, the first landing became a celebration. We built a camp on the silver shore. I duplicated shelters, bridges, kitchens, docks, and defensive walls. Grant's recovery drinks reacted with the liquid mana leaves and gained a new effect. 1 bottle temporarily allowed normal people to see dungeon routes. Lydia discovered that the underwater ruins held calm memory spirits from an ancient civilization. They guided divers toward safe chambers. Harper found that the blue crystal mountains naturally stored transport marks, allowing gates to remain open without fuel. The Academy Rescue Unit entered the nearest cliff dungeon and returned carrying a sleeping creature that looked like a tiny cloud with paws. The monster farm workers immediately requested breeding space. Every discovery created another business. I tried giving everything away. People used the free materials to build towns, workshops, schools, inns, farms, and expedition halls. Those places ordered more recovery drinks, demon ore, transport wagons, and monster crops from home. I tried refusing ownership of the sky vessel. The ancient crystal had already marked my mana as its command pattern. I tried leaving the continent unnamed so no one could advertise it. The expedition crews began calling it Cole's Mistake. The name spread in one day. I hated it less than Dungeon Billionaire. A week later, I finally built my cabin. It stood on a quiet hill above the silver shore. No gold walls, no giant towers, no vault. Just wood, stone, a small garden, and a wide window facing the ocean. Harper inspected it and found no traps. Grant delivered a box of experimental pie ingredients. Lydia placed one friendly spirit in the fireplace. The Academy unit left half of their old sofa on the porch because they claimed every great headquarters needed one. For the first time in my second life, I sat alone in a peaceful cabin. No assassin waited outside. No curse whispered through the walls. No monster attacked the garden. No dungeon opened beneath the floor. I baked a pie. I duplicated it. One pie became two. I ate the first slice while watching the sun set over the unknown continent. The businesses were safe. Silas was jailed. The Black Ascent had ended. The hatchling was stable. The empty sky route was open. Thousands of people had homes, work, food, and protection because of the failures I once wanted to erase. I had not become poor. I had become something better than rich. I had become impossible to remove from the world without the world noticing. That was not the quiet life I planned, but it was a life no assassin could steal easily. I raised the second slice of pie. Then the white sphere rolled out from under the table. I had not brought it into the cabin. A tiny door opened on its surface. A small hand reached out, took the pie, and disappeared. Another door opened. This one was larger. Inside, I saw a dark sea beneath a red moon. 7 black towers stood in the water. Chains stretched between them. Something enormous moved below the surface, large enough to make the towers lean as it passed. The black key in my pocket became warm. A second key pushed halfway through the sphere's door. It was silver, covered in fresh cracks, and attached to a piece of paper. Only 4 words were written on it. Please bring more drinks. I stared at the message. Far away, beyond the new continent, a red light appeared on the horizon. It pulsed once. The dungeon routes beneath my feet answered. Harper opened the cabin door behind me. Grant and Lydia stood beside her. The Academy platform hovered above the garden with both ridiculous face bells ringing. No one needed an explanation. I looked at my peaceful cabin. I looked at the unfinished pie. I looked at the silver key. Then I smiled. Maybe the dark sea was worthless. Maybe the towers contained nothing. Maybe the enormous creature would destroy every ship we sent. Maybe, after all these years, I had finally found an investment bad enough to make me poor. I duplicated the silver key. The sky split open.